Chapter 1392. Each of the 360 professions had its own master. Merchants who had the ability to expand their businesses naturally had a vision that ordinary people couldn't compare to. While this group of people was painstakingly trying to find a way, someone had already seen Jiang Pingji one step ahead of them. This person was none other than the leader of Chongzhou's Chui clan, Chui Yu. When outsiders mentioned the Chui family of Chongzhou, they would always mention their clan leader, Chui Yu, whose eyes were like torches. This was because Chui Yu had placed a heavy bet on Jiang Pingji before her power grew. It was precisely because of this choice that the small family that had been hovering between second and third class leaped to become the leader of Chongzhou's powers. Before relying on Jiang Pingji, the Chui family of Chongzhou was seen as a fence-sitter in the eyes of outsiders. They relied on business with the north borderline to make a fortune and were always looked down upon. After Jiang Pingji took over Chongzhou, she faced the threat of the north borderline and the suppression of the local aristocrats in Chongzhou. The Chuis were not afraid of the situation and resolutely chose to support Jiang Pingji. The facts proved that the Chuis' gamble had paid off. As a reward, the Chuis obtained the right to sell bamboo paper and rice paper from Jiang Pingji. After the two parties had cooperated for 5 years, the Chuis could also obtain the secret recipe of the two kinds of paper. Relying on this business, the Chui family had made a lot of money in the past few years, and their status had risen along with it. Chui Yu heard that Jiang Pingji wanted to attract investors to build a branch of the Golden Scale Academy, so he rushed over without stopping to rest. Fortunately, when Chui Yu heard the news, he was checking on business at a shop not far from Wanzhou. Otherwise it would have been too late. When Jiang Pingji heard about Chui Yu's visit, she was rather surprised. Why isn't he staying in Chongzhou? Why is he here in Wanzhou? In the live stream room, Salted Fish wore a dumbfounded look. It had been too long and Salted Fish had changed batches after batches. They had forgotten who Chui Yu was. Fortunately, there was still a group of big shots in the live broadcast room. They were all good students who took notes during the live broadcast. Gui Kai Guofengxiu, Chui Yu from Chongzhou? I have some impression of him. He seems to be the family head of Chongzhou's Chui family. I remember his name is Chonghuan because this fellow always reminds me of Yuan Chonghuan. Speaking of which, this man hasn't shown his face in the live broadcast room for many years, Tudu Feiqiu. If Chui Yu hadn't appeared, I would have forgotten who he was. Old Salted Fish's attitude of meeting an old friend in a foreign land piqued the newbie's curiosity. Salami, who is Chui Yu? What about his looks? How old is he? Poor Taoist sees your chrysanthemum is poisonous. During the earthquake in Dongqing, the streamer saved a baby who was protected by his mother before she died. That baby was Chui Yu's son. Later on, the streamer used this child to get in touch with Chui Yu, roped in the Chui family, suppressed the other aristocratic families in Chongzhou, and turned the tables to take control of Chongzhou. As for Chui Yu, he should be around the same age as Feng Zhen. He was married and had a son. The Salted Fish all had the same question in their hearts. What was Chui Yu's purpose for coming here? Could it be that it was also to fight for a place in the branch academy? No matter how curious Salted Fish was, the answer could only be revealed when he met the person. After not seeing each other for several years, time did not leave a deep mark on Chui Yu's face. Instead, it added some depth and steadiness to his face. Jiang Pingji went straight to the point and asked, "Why did Zhonghuan come to Wanzhou?" She was a busy person and her time was precious. She didn't have the time to keep him in suspense. Chui Yu was also used to Jiang Pingji's straightforwardness. He said, "Because some parts of the accounts collected last year don't match up, I've been checking the shops outside for the past few days. I happen to hear that my lord is preparing to build a branch of the Golden Scale Academy. I wonder if this is true?" Jiang Pingji looked at Chui Yu with a faint smile. Of course it's true. Could it be that Zhonghuan also has such intentions? The Salted Fish couldn't help but hold their breath. They felt that the atmosphere was not quite right. Chui Yu came to invest. Wasn't this a good thing? Why did the streamer look unhappy? The Chui family has been operating for many years and has a small amount of assets. If my lord doesn't mind, I will naturally offer it to you to solve this urgent need. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "Zhonghuan's news is outdated. I slaughtered a few fat sheep from the Tao family a while ago. Why would I be short of money?" Chui Yu revealed a relaxed smile and said gently, "I see. Then I'm overthinking." After the two of them finished talking, the inexplicably tense atmosphere dissipated, leaving the Salted Fish confused. "Yinuagia Zhuge Qinmao. Have you forgotten the identity of the Chui family? The Chui family is now second to none in Chongzhou. They used to be rich and now they have power and influence. They are also trusted by the streamer and have taken over many profitable businesses. If the Chui family gets involved in the branch of the Golden Scale Academy, the students from the branch will be the Chui family's natural connections. These students are talents that the streamer spent a lot of money and time to nurture. It is impossible for them to become ordinary people. At the very least, they will be low-ranking officials. Those who are capable may even be high-ranking officials. If the Chui family is a little ambitious, it will be much easier for them to form a clique for personal gain. Chui Yu came to test Jiang Pingji. Seeing that she had no intention of letting the Chui family get involved in this aspect, he changed his words. The salted fish listened to the analysis of the big boss and could not help but shout at the society. Does one need intelligence to watch the live stream these days? After all, Chui Yu was one of them. Jiang Pingji did not treat him too harshly. She rejected Chui Yu's participation in the battle and handed over the paper supply business to Chui Yu. With the gradual improvement of the paper-making technology, the annual consumption of paper rose in a straight line. The production model of a small workshop could no longer meet such a large demand. Coincidentally, Jiang Pingji and Chui Yu's 5-year cooperation was about to end. At that time, she will hand over the secret recipe of paper production to the Chui family. After the Chui family has made a lot of money, the secret recipe will be made public so that other merchants can have a share of the profits. When there are more merchants producing paper, the market price will gradually decrease as the production volume increases. In the end, the ordinary scholars will benefit. Hearing Jiang Pingji's decision, Chui Yu's expression became much better. His worried heart also relaxed. The child of the Zhonghuan family is also studying in the academy? I remember the child is called Fushou, right? Regarding the name Fushou, which has a good meaning but is unbearably vulgar, Chui Yu could only maintain an awkward but polite smile. He had no choice. He begged Jiang Pingji for this name. No matter how vulgar it is, he has to use it. My son has been studying in the academy for 2 years. The master has taught him attentively. A while ago he sent a letter home saying that he got into the top 3 in his class. Jiang Pingji praised him sincerely. Top 3? That's really good. The Zhonghuan family has a successor. Chui Yu thought that Jiang Pingji was still single and did not even have a child. He could only listen silently with a smile and did not dare to answer. The outside world was waiting to see Jiang Pingji make a fool of herself. No one expected that the Chui family would appear at this juncture. Knowing that the Chui family did not get the quota, the crowd continued to sneer and watch. A group of merchants with big businesses could not sit still. Chui Yu was Jiang Pingji's confidant. If he wanted to fight for the quota, they really had no hope. Chapter 1393. The outside world was waiting to see a joke. Unexpectedly, on the day of registration, merchants with some wealth almost trampled the threshold of the registration office. Is it true that money burns one's hands? TSK, we commoners don't understand the thoughts of the rich. How can they not feel bad losing hundreds of thousands of coins? Some people were puzzled and some people maliciously speculated and spread rumors. Maybe the Duke of Lanting knew that no one would come, so he specially invited people from the theatrical troupe to make a guest appearance. Naturally, there were people who came out to refute the rumors. What theatrical troupe making a guest appearance? Which one of you haven't seen the performers from the theatrical troupe? I took a peek just now, guess who I saw? My old boss is also there. My old boss is the boss of Chen's shop. He has many businesses: rice shop, cloth shop, food shop, wine shop. Walk 2 streets ahead and turn left. That cloth shop is owned by my old boss and it only serves nobles. Hey, come on, you're a barefoot rough man. Have you ever seen the boss of Chen's shop? The surrounding people ridiculed him and the man's face turned red with anger. However, he was not good with words and could not win against others. On the other side, the rich man in the eyes of the commoners, the boss of Chen's shop, also obediently queued up to register. Looking to his left, there were old business acquaintances. Looking to his right, there were old business rivals. Suddenly, he felt a headache coming on and had no idea what to do. Not only did he have a headache, but his old acquaintances and rivals also had a headache. There were too many wolves and not enough meat. There were only 2 slots, but there were 40 to 50 people competing for them. It seemed that to win they could only rely on their wealth. Many people secretly gritted their teeth, planning to spend a lot of money to get a slot. Unexpectedly, the person in charge said that this was only the first stage. Everyone was at a loss. This was only the first stage? The person in charge said, although the branch has the name of a branch, it is actually no different from the main branch. The students of the branch are also the pillars of the future, and their reputation cannot be tarnished. Of course, we have to be very careful in selecting the honorary dean. Family wealth is secondary, and the most important thing is integrity. Wealth is obtained in the right way. Profit from righteousness, conduct business, compete fairly, and never break the law or harm the common people. Once they obtain the quota, they would basically be considered half an official's family. Even if their children could not become officials, they would still be respected by others. Jiang Pingji's meaning was very clear. I'm not interested in the money in your pockets. I'm more interested in your reputation. If your reputation is bad, no matter how rich you are, you'll still have to scram. Everyone was excited and trembling at the same time. They could not help but rack their brains to recall if their businesses had violated any laws or regulations. When it came to merchants, some relied on black-hearted business to make huge profits in a short period of time, while others relied on integrity and hard work to slowly expand their business. Upon hearing the manager's words, many merchants silently heaved a sigh of relief and revealed meaningful smiles. The other group of people were sad. They wished they could go back in time and kill this dark history in the cradle. The person in charge said, "We will send envoys to investigate in secret, so please don't lie." Everyone's face turned pale. If he didn't think of a way to fake it, how could he deceive everyone? The person in charge also appropriately revealed Jiang Pingji's intention to support the merchants. Although she did not agree to allow the merchants to become officials, everyone saw hope. Naturally, they did not dare to ask for more. They went home happily and waited for the news. As long as they passed the first test, it meant that the remaining people were good merchants who operated with integrity. With the government certification, they could also gain a favorable impression among the people. It was a steady profit and not a loss. The outside world looked on dumbfoundedly. They did not expect there to be more than one prodigal with too much money in the world. There was a string of people rushing to give money to Jiang Pingji. Not only that, but Jiang Pingji was also picky. Those who did not meet the requirements were not qualified to beg her to collect money. How infuriating. After a selection that was comparable to a talent show, Jiang Pingji considered all aspects of the conditions and finally chose two families as the lucky ones for this activity. The Qin family and the Sun family, the two big businesses, were selected. The Sun family cried tears of joy. The retired head supported himself with a walking stick and trembled as he opened the ancestral hall to thank the ancestors for their blessings. He cried and laughed at the same time, which made people worry about the old ancestors' health. The reaction of the Qin family was not much calmer. Not only did they open the ancestral hall, but they also held a 3-day banquet. Regardless of status, everyone could attend. Even if a group of beggars came, they could also eat and drink. Jiang Pingji even met the two personally to discuss the location of the branch. The two heads were so nervous that they could not speak coherently. Their hands and feet were trembling. The whole process was basically Jiang Pingji's suggestion. The two said, "Yes, okay, no problem, you can make the decision, Lord Lanting." In front of Lord Lanting, they only needed to talk. They did not need to bring their brains. There was also a small interlude in the middle, which was about the land of the branch. The land was Jiang Pingji's, but the two families had to buy it from Jiang Pingji. They had to pay 100 years of rent in one go. Because it was not fertile land, the price was not expensive. 200 mu of land did not cost much. The salted fish in the streaming room felt sorry for the two honest people. Jiang Pingji was clearly ripping them off. The people who were being ripped off had to smile and say yes. They took the initiative to wash their necks and machetes and waited anxiously for Jiang Pingji to rip them off. Grafizi, I feel so sorry for them that I can't watch anymore. These two are the most honest people of the year. The salted fish felt sorry for them, but the two were overjoyed and enjoyed it. Jiang Pingji said, "As for the branch, I will send someone to contact the two of you after the rules and regulations are drawn up. If you have any suggestions, you can raise them. If there are no accidents, the branch should start construction on the auspicious day next month. It is estimated that it will be completed by the middle of next year. You have invested a lot, so it is inevitable that you will neglect the learning and education of the younger generation. If there is a talented younger generation in your family, you can try to send them to the branch." After the two heard it, they were so moved that they wanted to cry. Their hearts were completely at ease. They had just invested, and they saw the hope of the autumn harvest. Jiang Pingji sent the two middle-aged men who were moved to tears away. Before she had a moment of peace, someone outside said that Lu Zhao wanted to see her. Sister, save little brother." Lu Zhao had just arrived when he pounced on Jiang Pingji like a swallow throwing itself into her arms. She dodged him coldly and stretched out her leg to trip him. Unsurprisingly, Lu Zhao fell and staggered. He felt wronged and said, "Sister, Lu Zhao's gaze was filled with, "You are cold, heartless and unreasonable. What happened to the brother-sister love?" Jiang Pingji said, "Tell me what's the matter. Don't tell me you don't have any spare change to spend again?" Lu Zhao said, "Sister, do you think I'm such a worthless piece of trash? This is really an urgent matter. Speak normally." Lu Zhao said, "Father is coming. The letter just arrived and he's already here." "Lushi?" Jiang Pingji frowned. "Father is coming? Why didn't anyone inform me?" Lu Zhao said, "Sister, aren't you busy with work? I also waited for an hour before I saw you." Jiang Pingji stood up and flicked her sleeves. She said calmly, "I am going to see father. Do you want to come?" Lu Zhao trembled and said with a bitter face, "If father questions me about running away from the marriage, you have to help me." Chapter 1394. Lu Zhao couldn't help but feel touched. "Sister, you were so charming just now." Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and patted his head with a smile. "You have good taste, kid." Salted fish in the streaming room couldn't help but praise Lu Zhao's desire to live. For the sake of his life, he would say anything that went against his conscience. Xingyuan Miao Miao, it's tragic. Brother Lu Zhao seems to be the first person of the opposite sex to praise the streamer's charm. Wandering Yuhang, streamer, you can't defeat a frog even after 10 years. Why don't you change your strategy and find out more about the German orthopedics department? Xinyun Feishing, the unpopular couple has finally been noticed? I really like the queen sister and the lackey CP. When the streamer interacts with Zhao's brother, I feel that the aura around her becomes gentle. I really like the way they interact. Yixia Jixing, the streamer is indeed the main attacker. She can attack whoever the couple is. But Zhao's brother is too weak. I don't like it. Lu Zhao shuddered and followed behind Jiang Pingji like a little wife. He was even more afraid at the thought of meeting Lu Shi. Sister, guess why father came to Wanzhou? Jiang Pingji smiled. Didn't you run away from your wedding last time? Maybe he's here to bring up the past again? Lu Zhao was so scared that he tripped over his right foot. If Jiang Pingji hadn't helped him, he might have fallen to the ground. Sister, don't scare me. I don't like the person father arranged, Jiang Pingji asked calmly. If you don't like the person he arranged, who do you like? No matter what, you're not young anymore. If you're still single and there's no woman to serve you, outsiders will only say that I'm not a good sister and that I'm treating my brother badly. Lu Zhao felt his scalp go numb. His sister's question was a dead end. He couldn't answer it well. I don't have a girl I like. Lu Zhao couldn't help but say shyly, I'm still young. Keep me by your side for 2 more years. Jiang Pingji snorted meaningfully, but she didn't comment. When the siblings saw Lu Shi, he was sitting opposite Gu Zhen and drinking. The faint fragrance of pear blossom wine wafted through the air. Brother-in-law's brewing skills are almost the same as my sister's. Gu Dai was dressed in casual clothes and slightly made up. She looked a few years younger than her actual age. It was just like the saying, Sun Yang is getting old but still charming. Lu Shi, who was sitting opposite her, was still dressed in a dark green Confucian robe. His hair was dyed gray, and there was a sense of relaxation and contentment between his brows. He said, being almost the same doesn't mean it's the same. In the end, it's still different. It can't replicate her taste. While the two of them were talking, Jiang Pingji brought the cowardly and weak Lu Zhao inside and bowed to the two of them. Lu Zhao also obediently followed suit, wishing that she could hide her petite body in the shadow of her elder sister's sturdy body. Father, mother. Gu Zhen agreed with a smile, but Lu Shi snorted coldly. He placed the wine cup in his hand on the table with a clang, scaring Lu Zhao so much that his heart trembled. Jiang Pingji said, Why did father suddenly come? At least let me know in advance so that I can send people out of the city to welcome my father. Seeing that Jiang Pingji had spoken, Lu Zhao secretly rejoiced that he had successfully changed his target. Who knew that Lu Shi would not let him go? I'm here for my unfilial son's marriage. It's just a family matter. It's more important for you to attend to your own business. There's no need to involve so many people. Lu Shi's pitch-black eyes seemed to hide a horrifying sharp blade. Lu Zhao felt uncomfortable when he looked at him. He wanted to find a hole to hide in. He was extremely afraid of Lu Shi. If Jiang Pingji had not stood in front of him, Lu Zhao did not know whether he would have made a fool of himself in front of everyone. For Zhao's marriage? Jiang Pingji tilted her head and looked at the pitiful Lu Zhao. She said, Marriage depends on fate. Zhao still wants to play around and is unwilling to get married. Why should father force him? It's better to let him play around. He wants to settle down when he's old enough. After playing around for 3 or 4 years, when Lu Xiao was tired, he would naturally want to find an honest man to be his successor. Lu Shi said, Lanting is always so protective of him. You spoil him so much that he doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Marriage is naturally decided by parents. He doesn't know how old he is. He's always fooling around and doesn't know how to settle down. When can he get married and not be a burden to you? Jiang Pingji said indifferently, I think I have some resources. I can afford to raise 10 more children, let alone one. Lu Xiao was moved to tears. Sister, she was definitely his biological sister. She was standing up to his father, Lu Shi, for her brother. Lu Shi sighed. If it's about raising him, I can afford it. I don't lack food for him. He had come to settle Lu Xiao's marriage. He had fulfilled one of his wishes. Jiang Pingji saw that he was determined, so she could only ask Lu Shi. Father, you've made up your mind. I can't stop you or reject your good intentions. About Zhao's marriage, do you have a candidate in mind? Lu Xiao's heart suddenly turned cold. Sister, you have to bear the pressure. Lu Shi rolled his eyes at Lu Xiao and grumpily said, I do have a few good candidates and their temperaments and family backgrounds are similar, but I still have to ask this unfilial son if he has any women he likes. Otherwise, why would he run away to Wanzhou without saying a word? Lu Xiao suddenly became the center of attention. He was so scared that his heart trembled. He said with a slight lack of confidence, I do have a girl I like, but Jiang Pingji was not surprised. Lu Shi asked, but what? Could it be that she's married? Master Cheng's youngest daughter. Lu Xiao gathered his courage and said, We've met a few times, but it's just my unrequited love. She doesn't know what you're thinking. I don't know if Master Cheng has arranged a marriage for her, so I haven't dared to say it. Jiang Pingji said, If you knew this was what you were thinking, why didn't you say it earlier? I could have talked to Master Cheng for you. Lu Shi said coldly, He doesn't deserve it. He's Lu Shi's younger brother. There's no one he doesn't deserve. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, Zhao, go back and wait for the news. I'll go to Master Cheng's residence and ask him about it. If that Cheng Yangzi is still unmarried, this marriage may not be impossible. Lu Xiao was dumbfounded. He felt, Lu Shi and Jiang Pingji seemed to have swapped positions. According to his calculations, shouldn't Lu Shi be the matchmaker while his sister objected or tried to smooth things over? Based on Lu Xiao's current status, it was politically awkward for him to be Master Cheng's daughter. They were indeed not a good match. Lu Xiao was sent away by Jiang Pingji, and Gu Jin also gave some space to the father and daughter. Jiang Pingji sat in Gu Jin's seat and took a clean cup of wine. She drank by herself and said, Father, why are you here all of a sudden? She had asked this question once before. The first time she still had the live stream open. The second time she turned it off. Lu Shi said, I'm here for my unfilial son Lu Xiao. Chapter 1395. Lu Shi was silent for a long time. After a while, he said calmly and confidently, You won't kill him, so there's nothing to worry about. Indeed, I won't kill him. Zhao is quite cute. She changed the topic. I won't kill him, but that doesn't mean others won't. Most people would think that the others Jiang Pingji mentioned were radicals who were loyal to her. No matter how well Jiang Pingji did, no matter how high she rose, and no matter how many children her age could play mahjong together, she had no intention of getting married or pregnant. It was impossible for her subordinates not to be anxious. Under such circumstances, there would definitely be people who wanted her to have an heir as soon as possible, even if it was a son from another branch of the family. But there were also people who supported Jiang Pingji. Lu Xiao was the biggest target to eliminate any hidden danger that could usurp the throne. However, Lu Shi knew that Jiang Pingji was not referring to those people but someone else. Because it's dangerous, I want to use marriage as an excuse to send him far away. It's good to let him be a rich and idle man. You don't look like someone who is willing to live in peace. Jiang Pingji sneered. Can a rich and idle man satisfy your appetite? No one in the world is born greedy. Lu Shi avoided the question. As long as that unfilial son is satisfied. Jiang Pingji said, Zhao is Lanting's biological brother. Of course he will get what he wants. The father and daughter's conversation came to an end, and they drank a jar of wine in silence. Jiang Pingji asked him, What kind of person is Gu Min? She's a person who is passionate about life. She's sunny and beautiful. You can tell from her eyes that she grew up in a comfortable and peaceful environment. Lu Shi raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. I thought you were very similar to her, but it turns out that I was wrong. The first time he saw Jiang Pingji, he knew that she and Gu Min were completely different people. Both of them were pure, but one was pure white and the other was pure black. Jiang Pingji said, "Look at you. You make it sound like I'm a ruthless person who kills people like flies." Lu Shi was strangely silent. Wasn't she? Not to mention what kind of person she was in her previous life. The number of people who had died in her hands in the past few years in Dongqing was in the tens of thousands. When did you start to doubt me? Lu Shi had never been able to figure it out. Jiang Pingji smiled. Her eyes were misty because of the wine. That's an interesting question, father. I've never trusted anyone since the beginning. Jiang Pingji played with the wine cup in her hand, and her lips curled into a sly smile. If it were an ordinary person, most of them would feel uneasy because they are suddenly in an unfamiliar environment and urgently need to find stability from someone they know. Recognizing the body's identity and the body's relatives and obtaining a sense of security from them was one of the most convenient channels. It was also a reflexive choice for the weak to protect themselves. I personally think that I am not a weakling. The corner of Lu Shi's mouth twitched. There were too many things to complain about. He didn't know if she was too conceited and arrogant or something else, but she was also quite narcissistic. From the very beginning, I have never acknowledged Lu Shi's identity, nor will I regard Lu Shi's identity and connections as my own, nor will I be completely immersed in them. Jiang Pingji said, "Jump out of the shackles and barriers of identity and emotions. Many things are not difficult to explain." Without the filter brought by her identity and emotions, she was able to calmly watch Lu Shi's performance. She was happy to cooperate with him. Lu Shi was speechless. Sure enough, the deep love between father and daughter was an illusion created by the two acting queens. "You and I are not meant to be. It is all thanks to acting." Lu Shi said, "Do you know that there is a phrase called acting out for real?" No matter how good an actor's acting was, he or she would also be lost in the overly realistic emotions. They would involuntarily act out for real and lose themselves in the illusion. Lu Shi found that Jiang Pingji did not have this problem at all. Even when the father-daughter relationship was at its best, she still maintained her rationality. Jiang Pingji knew what Lu Shi was trying to say. "I have long passed the age of yearning for fatherly and motherly love. Maybe I yearned for it when I was young because I was weak. But after that period of time, these feelings are no longer necessities for me, they are burdens." Jiang Pingji said expressionlessly, "Even if I have a 12-year-old body again, a kind and gentle father, a dignified and beautiful stepmother, and an adorable and silly brother, I can't go back, I can't go back. I can act, but I really can't regard someone younger than me as my father. You are making things difficult for me." Moreover, the kind and gentle father was fake, the dignified and beautiful stepmother was fake, and the cute and adorable brother was also fake. How could she have real feelings for something that was fake? Lu Shi, wait, she was actually older than him? How did Jiang Pingji call a man younger than her father, without any psychological barriers? Lu Shi's eyes said it all. Jiang Pingji replied, "I am a professional person." Lu Shi, the two of them were silent again. Lu Shi did not expect the two of them to lay their cards on the table so easily. Even though they already knew the truth, there was still a layer of window paper that had not been exposed. Now that it had been exposed, neither of them could pretend that it had never happened. Jiang Pingji said, "You have said so much to me today. Are you planning to form an alliance with me?" Lu Shi replied, "Why not? The enemy of my enemy is my friend." Jiang Pingji revealed a meaningful smile. What happened to the allies who had formed an alliance with her in the past? That person's hiding place is extremely secretive. Although I don't know the specific location, he is definitely in Wanzhou by your side. Lu Shi said, "His purpose is very clear. He wants the fate of the whole world. As the son of fate, you must be a target that he keeps a close eye on." Jiang Pingji said, "I know. I also have a question. Wouldn't it be easier for him to plot against me and fight for the world by himself?" The corner of Lu Shi's mouth twitched. He was slightly speechless. "You have the god-slaying sword by your side. Why are you still asking this question?" The main system had been cowardly and refused to show up. Wasn't it because the dimensional patrolling merchant had not left? Before the hidden danger of the plane was solved, it was impossible for him to leave. That was why the main system had its eyes on Jiang Pingji. In addition, Jiang Pingji said, "I just find it boring. Since the dimensional patrolling merchant restrains him, what is the point of my existence?" She thought she was the chess player. Suddenly knowing that she was just a chess piece in someone else's hands, she was naturally unhappy. "I don't know either," Lu Shi said. Jiang Pingji asked, You came to lay your cards on the table with me. Isn't this a betrayal to him? Are you worried about me? Lu Shi raised his eyebrows and said firmly, "Don't worry, he is not nearby. He won't know." Jiang Pingji said, "One last question. Have you sent someone to assassinate Wen Zheng?" Chapter 1396. Lu Shi's face showed some surprise and astonishment. Jiang Pingji looked at his face calmly without blinking. "Is this important to you?" Lu Shi raised his eyebrows and looked at Jiang Pingji with a complicated expression. He wasn't a gossipy person, but he was curious about the man who was lucky enough to get so many beauties in the history that Gu Min knew. He had suspected Qiguan Rang before, but ever since Qiguan Rang married Wei Yuan's eldest daughter, Lu Shi removed him from the list. Now he wasn't so sure. Could it be that Qiguan Rang would lose his wife in the future and the two of them would secretly get married a few years later? If that was the case, what would happen to Wei Ci? Jiang Pingji didn't know what Lu Shi was thinking. She said indifferently, "Honesty is the basic attitude of an alliance. I didn't send anyone to kill him." Lu Shi shook his head and denied it. He suddenly thought of something and said with uncertainty, "But I can't guarantee that I didn't." All living creatures had 7 emotions and 6 desires, and he was no exception. However, he was arrogant and conceited. He regarded the 7 emotions and 6 desires as a burden, so he took the initiative to abandon this part of his emotions. In the end, this part of the emotions became an independent Lu Shi. Although he became independent, they came from the same source and the other party retained his strength. If he wanted to use my hand to do something, I wouldn't be able to detect it. Lu Shi hated this state of affairs. The other party had taken advantage of the situation and controlled the body to strangle Gu Min, who had just given birth. Not only Gu Min, but the 2 sons who died young were also related to the other party. Lu Shi didn't dare to think about it. Gu Min was desperate and resentful before she died. She had always been a smart person. The main body of the system wanted to kill Gu Min mostly because Gu Min knew something she shouldn't have known, and that was why she was killed. For example, the truth of the 2 sons' deaths. The main body was afraid that Gu Min would spill the beans, so he killed her. Jiang Pingji said, "Wenjing injured his left hand in the assassination. According to him, the assassins behaved strangely. They didn't seem to want to kill him, but more like they were testing something. At first, I suspected that they were sent by you to test whether Wenjing was my weakness." Lu Shi was confused. "Weakness?" Jiang Pingji said, "The person I trust the most and am least guarded against is my weakness." Lu Shi remained silent for a while. "With all due respect, such a person can't possibly exist, right? Everyone should have a dream. Who knows, I might have guessed it." Jiang Pingji's tone remained calm as usual, as if what she said was as normal as, "It's a sunny day today." She said, "I have my reasons for suspecting you. Weren't you my enemy before we had a showdown and formed an alliance?" As a normal father, no one would like a wandering ghost to take over his daughter's body and identity. It was only natural for him to take over everything she had and use it to make a name for himself, right? If I were the father, I would punch that shameless outsider to death. I also suspected that Lu Shi wasn't dead and that she was still alive in some corner of the world. When I unite the world and stand in the most honorable position in the world, you will let her come back and occupy this body and identity. Lu Shi and Jiang Pingji had always been on opposing sides. Jiang Pingji had taken over Lu Shi's daughter's body. Why would Lu Shi like her when he knew it? Was it because she could achieve something that Lu Shi could never achieve in his lifetime? Lu Shi was not Gu Zhen. He might not care about fame and fortune. They could remove their masks and talk calmly only because they had the same enemy and had no choice but to form an alliance. Following Jiang Pingji's narration, Lu Shi's calm expression began to crack. After a person dies, it takes a certain amount of time for their spirit to completely dissipate. When I entered this body, my body was warm. In other words, someone took away the real Lu Shi in a very short time. Lu Shi had just left and I came right after. I don't need to think too much about who took Lu Shi away. Of course, I have reason to suspect that you are in cahoots with that person and have reached some kind of mutually beneficial agreement. You have to pretend to be calm and composed in front of the enemy who killed your daughter, every day. Your professionalism is beyond doubt. Jiang Pingji said with a tone of, "I knew it." My speculation is not baseless, right? Lu Shi was speechless and only retorted after a while. "You know that I have ill intentions towards you, but you can still play along with me calmly. You are indeed worthy of being the future Emperor Qin. You are indeed admirable." Jiang Pingji said, "The reason why conspiracies are so frightening is because of the dark word. Unknown dangers are the most difficult to guard against. You belong to the known category to me. At the same time, you don't know that I have ill intentions towards you. Who do you think should be more afraid? Lu Shi was speechless. He was really speechless. He had thought that Jiang Pingji was important enough, but the person in front of him was more difficult to deal with than he had expected. Jiang Pingji said, "As we speak, I am suddenly very curious about something. My dear ally, can you explain it to me?" Lu Shi was speechless. How could he say no? If they continued talking, he would really doubt whether his decision to form an alliance with Jiang Pingji was right or wrong. To some extent, Jiang Pingji was much more terrifying than the main body of the system. As a separate part of the system, you must have a reason to give up your cooperation with him and your plan to let Lu Shi come back and take over my body, right? If the reason is not good enough, I really doubt whether you sincerely want to cooperate with me or are you trying to trick me. Lu Shi was silent for a long time. He refused to answer the question, but Jiang Pingji could guess. For Lu Shi, who was more important than his daughter Lu Shi and son Lu Zhao? This person could make him give up his cooperation with the system and turn to Jiang Pingji as an ally. After thinking about it, there was only one answer. Gu Min. Gu Min's death has something to do with the main body of the system? Jiang Pingji said with certainty. You said before that the main body of the system took over your body and used it to do things you didn't want to do, and you didn't know anything about it. Let me make a bold guess. Could it be that the guy used your body to hurt Gu Min, or even kill her? You know the truth, so you decided to abandon your previous plan and form an alliance with me? Lu Shi glanced at her out of the corner of his eye and said coldly, "You can shut up." She knew that it was a wound that should not be touched, but she still stepped on it persistently. If it were not for her strength, she would have been put in a gunny sack and beaten to death. It seems that I have guessed correctly. Jiang Pingji was not surprised. Because this body belongs to your daughter, we are on opposite sides, and there is no possibility of peaceful coexistence. When the main body of the system is killed, if you don't want to die, you'd better find a way out for yourself. Once the system died, Jiang Pingji would have nothing to worry about. She would personally remove all the hidden dangers. She hoped that Lu Shi would not do anything that would cross her bottom line. Chapter 1397. Lu Shi said, "Don't be so sure. Even if you and I are allies, how can we easily kill someone who is on par with God?" "God." Jiang Pingji said coldly, "You're just a stray dog. What else can you do besides barking and hiding?" Lu Shi was speechless. Her words were reasonable and he couldn't refute it. After all, the main body of the system was in such a state. Lu Shi said expressionlessly, "If that's the case, I won't say any more nonsense. I wish you good luck. I only hope that you can get what you want. Don't be like me, who was too smart for my own good and lost the one I love. I was wrong. Maybe you don't love at all." Jiang Pingji rested her chin on her hand and said, "Who said that? How can a lovable and lovely person like me be a single dog?" Lu Shi couldn't bear it anymore and said, "Shut up." Jiang Pingji couldn't help but laugh. It was the first time she saw Lu Shi on the verge of breaking down. Lu Shi said, "According to what we know, the person is hiding around you. It's very likely that he's with someone close to you. If Jiang Pingji wasn't careful, she would lose the person. Let's see if she could still laugh then. Of course I know. I've locked on to the target. No one can take my things and people away from me," Jiang Pingji said confidently and conceitedly. Lu Shi held back and didn't say anything sarcastic in the end. After saying goodbye to Lu Shi, Jiang Pingji left with Lu Zhao, who was anxiously planting mushrooms. "Sister, what did you talk about with father? He doesn't look too good." Jiang Pingji said, "We talked about adult matters. Children shouldn't ask too much." Lu Zhao pursed his lips and tried hard to suppress the curiosity in his heart, lest curiosity killed the cat. "About the youngest daughter of the Cheng family, are you serious?" Jiang Pingji's tone was cheerful and didn't sound unhappy, but Lu Zhao didn't dare to say yes. The youngest daughter of the Cheng family's father was Cheng Cheng. Cheng had an invisible influence in the Wanzhou group. Lu Zhao didn't dare to provoke him to avoid unnecessary suspicion. Lu Zhao said bitterly, Isn't that to avoid father's forced marriage? Besides, the youngest daughter of the Cheng family isn't young anymore. How could she not be engaged? I'm just using it as a shield. Father won't stay in Wanzhou for long. When he returns to Chongzhou to retire, I'll have escaped with my life. Sister, don't tell me that you think I'm spending too much and want to drive me out? Lu Zhao took advantage of Lu Shi in Chongzhou and Jiang Pingji in Wanzhou. His monthly salary was not low. He had reason to suspect that Jiang Pingji despised him for being too extravagant. Jiang Pingji kicked his calf impatiently. She was slow and gentle, otherwise Lu Zhao's leg would have been broken. Lu Zhao, are you a man now? If you like him, then you like him. If you don't like him, then you don't like him. Why worry so much? Jiang Pingji put her hand on his shoulder as if they were good brothers. If you like it, I'll immediately go to your house and arrange a marriage for you. If you don't like it, I'll immediately go to your house and ask Mr. Cheng to arrange a marriage for his daughter. I don't want you to have other thoughts while we're unmarried. Jiang Pingji said mercilessly, after this year, I'm afraid I'll have to go to war and attack Nanxing. I won't be back for another year or two. By the time I'm back, maybe his child will be able to crawl and walk. Do you really not regret it? Lu Zhao did not speak. Jiang Pingji pressed his head with one hand, causing him to bend over. You're young but you have a lot of thoughts. Don't meddle in adult matters. Just live your own life. Jiang Pingji had always been alone. She had no siblings. Lu Zhao, the cowardly and weak boy, was especially likable to her. Lu Zhao had no conflict of interest with her, and the boy had never harbored any ill intentions towards her. Naturally, Jiang Pingji could tolerate him. Not to mention anything else, just for the sake of Gu Min, her brainless fan, she had to be merciful and soft-hearted. After the siblings walked for a while, Lu Zhao stammered and squeezed out a few words. Then I'll have to trouble you, sister. Help me ask if she's engaged. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, what if she's engaged? Then ask her if she likes her future husband's family. Jiang Pingji asked again, what if she likes them? Then ask her future husband's family if they have a short lifespan. Jiang Pingji smiled and asked, what if they have a long lifespan? Then ask her if she has considered having a daughter or something. Jiang Pingji said, what if she only has a boy? Sister, you're forcing me to my death, Lu Zhao said. Jiang Pingji said, if you really have such a hobby, I can beat you to death right now. Don't be a scourge while you're alive. Lu Zhao shuddered. Could he be blamed? Sister was the one who started it. He was just reacting accordingly. Jiang Pingji was not very busy recently. The next day she prepared a generous gift and visited Cheng Cheng's manor. Cheng Cheng and his wife did not know why and were secretly guessing her intentions. They did not expect to hear Jiang Pingji mention the youngest daughter in the manor. The husband and wife were both smart people. How could they not understand Jiang Pingji's intentions? She was planning to arrange a marriage for her brother, Lu Zhao. Even though Lu Zhao was the son of a concubine, he knew how to cozy up to someone powerful. In the marriage market he was quite popular. I already understand your intentions, Lord Lanting. Lu Sanlangjun is naturally a good choice. I've met him before, Ching Ching said. Although the marriage of children is decided by the parents, it also depends on the children's opinions. If my daughter is interested, I'm naturally willing to form an in-law relationship with you. Ching Cheng's daughter had naturally been engaged before, but the engagement had been broken off soon after. At that time Huang Song had openly and secretly hoped that Ching Cheng would attach himself to him, but Ching Cheng had a temper and refused to agree. Unexpectedly, the in-laws fawned on those in power. When they saw that Ching Cheng had rejected Huang Song, they were afraid that Huang Song would vent his anger on them, so they took the initiative to find an excuse to cancel the engagement. Ching Cheng almost fainted from anger. Later, Ching Cheng had a firm foothold on Jiang Pingji's side. Jiang Pingji's development also improved day by day. The in-laws shamelessly stuck to them again. They said that their son liked their daughter so much that he did not eat or drink all day and would not marry anyone else. Ching Cheng was disgusted again. Because of this, Ching Cheng and his wife could not continue to arrange a marriage for their daughter, so they simply kept her for another 2 years. Ching Cheng had also met Lu Zhao. Judging from the current situation, Lu Zhao had no ambition. He could not run away as a rich and idle person. The family structure was simple, and the Lord was also open-minded. His daughter would not be wronged if she married him. Ching Cheng was very satisfied. He did not hide it from Jiang Pingji and took the initiative to tell her the details. Jiang Pingji said, it's okay. These people are shameless. If they dare to talk nonsense again, we'll find an excuse to dismiss them in the future. Ching Cheng's status in Wanzhou was not low, but he really did not have much real power. He was also an upright person. No wonder the villains bullied him. As long as the youngest daughter of the Cheng family nodded, the marriage would be considered stable. He thought that he would have to argue, but who would have thought that as soon as he said it, his daughter would agree. Daughter, after all, this is a lifelong event. As a father, I will not force you to do anything. It's all up to you. Do you want to reconsider? She had agreed too quickly and he was a little flustered. I've met Lu Zhao before. He has a good temperament, but he doesn't lose his cuteness. He's easier to deal with than others. Chapter 1398. Sister, what did Qing Yangzi say? Is there an engagement? Do you like your husband's family? Is your husband's family short-lived? Do you have plans to have a daughter? Jiang Pengji had just returned when the boy, who had just crossed his legs and swung his legs, immediately came up to her shamelessly. Jiang Pengji brushed him away with a slap. This boy was so mischievous. He was itching for a beating. I'm thirsty. She raised her eyebrows at Lu Zhao. The lackey hurriedly poured tea for her and massaged her shoulders and legs. He was extremely attentive. Jiang Pengji said with satisfaction, there is an engagement, but that marriage fell through long ago. In the end you benefited from it. If there are no other accidents, this marriage is in the bag. As long as Master Cheng gives his word, I'll get someone to pick an auspicious day in a few days and send an iceman to the manor to be the matchmaker for you. Master Cheng's family is very strict. You can't make any mistakes. You should restrain yourself. Lu Zhao's little face was smiling like a spring flower. He opened his mouth and said all kinds of sweet words that cost nothing. If it was a young girl who had her first awakening of love, she might not be able to resist the temptation of this small mouth. However, Jiang Pengji was his sister. Not only did the latter's heart not beat wildly, but she also slapped him. What about the betrothal gift? Have you thought about it? Jiang Pengji asked him expressionlessly. Lu Zhao was at a loss. He immediately looked at her with a burning gaze. If he could shapeshift, he might be able to see the dog's tail that was wagging behind him. Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue and said, Zhao, don't tell me you want me to pay for your wife's dowry? Sister, have pity on me, Lu Zhao said matter-of-factly. Sister, look at me. I don't have any good points. Other than eating, drinking, and playing, I don't know anything else. I'm weak, pitiful, and helpless, but I can still eat. If you don't raise me, my whole family will have nothing to eat. Jiang Pengji had never seen such a shameless person. She was angry and amused at the same time. She wanted to slap his face again. How long do you plan to hide the assets that mother left for you? Jiang Pengji asked straightforwardly. Don't think that she didn't know that Gu Min had left a generous inheritance to Lu Zhao before she passed away. It wasn't much for her, but for Lu Zhao, a life of glory and wealth was no problem. This kid doesn't lack money, yet he keeps complaining about being poor to me. Does he have any shame? Lu Zhao wanted to play dumb, but when he saw Jiang Pengji's clear eyes, he knew that his secret could not be kept. Sigh, even if mother left behind a mountain of gold and silver, I can only sit and eat it all away. He said helplessly, besides, on the surface I'm just the son of a concubine from a lowly family. It's hard to guarantee that no one will suspect me if I make so much money all of a sudden. There are too many shrewd people working for sister. I'm afraid that if I make too much money, they'll suddenly kill me. I'm also very bitter, sob. Speaking of this, Lu Zhao felt extremely bitter in his heart. Other than being a good-for-nothing who didn't work hard, who didn't know how to distinguish grain from grain, everything he did was life-threatening. He couldn't become an official, he couldn't do business. If Lu Zhao didn't think of a way to make Jiang Pengji support him, how would he be able to provide for his old age? Weep, oink carrot oink, I'm bitter in my heart. Jiang Pengji couldn't help but laugh. By saying this, you want me to restore your identity as the third legitimate son? When Lu Zhao heard this, he was so scared that he almost jumped 3 feet high. His identity as the son of a concubine was already being watched by so many people. If he were restored as the legitimate son, and he was born from the same mother as sister, he wouldn't be able to live to see the sun rise the next day. Qiguan Rang, Yang Si, and Feng Zhen were all vegetarians? They'd really plot to murder him. Elder sister, please spare this little brother. It's not like you don't know how scary the shrewd people working for you are. They'll really kill people. I'm still your biological brother from the same mother. Can't we have some brotherly love? Lu Zhao wished he could kneel down to Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji couldn't help but rub her brows. Stand up, don't be so cowardly. Lu Zhao said righteously, this isn't cowardice, this is called a wise man submits to circumstances. Jiang Pengji said impatiently, tomorrow I'll look for my father to ask for a betrothal gift for you. He'll pay half and I'll pay the other half. After all, you're the apple of Master Cheng's eye. If the betrothal gift is shabby, it'll inevitably give people the impression that you're being disrespectful. You can offend anyone but a scholar. You have to maintain your dignity. Lu Zhao stammered, asking for it from my father? This isn't very good? Jiang Pengji lifted her foot and kicked Lu Zhao. She couldn't help but say angrily, you're his son, not mine. He won't pay for his son's marriage. How can there be such a good thing? Lu Zhao hugged her leg and said, "An elder sister is like a mother. Sister, do you understand?" Jiang Pingji's face was cold. She grabbed Lu Zhao's collar with one hand and dragged him out. She threw him aside and closed the door in one go. Lu Zhao lay on the ground and rolled around for a while. Seeing that Jiang Pingji wasn't soft-hearted, he sighed faintly and turned over to lie on the ground. He turned his head to look at the bright sunlight and the azure sky outside. As he looked, the corners of his lips couldn't help but curl into a faint smile. "Mother, please bless your son to get what he wants." The sunlight was dazzling. He squinted his eyes lazily and maintained the posture of lying on his back. He took a nap with his limbs spread out. The maids who were passing by saw him and they all chuckled and went around him. Not long after, the news that the Lu residence was about to hold a big wedding spread out. Everyone knew that Jiang Pingji's brother was getting married. So what if he's getting married? He's just the son of a concubine. Why does my lord have to indulge him so much? Yang Si rolled around in the piles of bamboo slips. The dark circles under his eyes were almost comparable to the iron-eating beast that Wei Si had raised. "I'm not afraid that he'll grow ambitious." Han Yu frowned when he heard that. Seeing that Yang Si was slacking off again, his excellent self-restraint almost broke down. He couldn't wait to kick over the piles of bamboo slips next to him so that Yang Si would be buried alive by the bamboo slips and get rid of a great evil for the world. Lu Zhaowen is not good at martial arts and his wife's clan is Mr. Cheng. He can't borrow any strength to pose a threat to my lord. Han Yu calmly analyzed, "If my lord can't even tolerate such a useless brother of a concubine, I don't know how the outside world will slander my lord. If you're jealous, just say it." Yang Si exploded all of a sudden. How was he jealous? What was he jealous about? Did he look like that kind of person? Han Yu sneered, "I heard that Captain Jiang is pregnant and he goes to the military camp every day to take attendance. He would rather walk around with a big belly and let the outside world speculate about the child's father than marry Yang Si." Yang Si was jealous. Yang Si was so angry that he pulled out the tip of the writing brush. Hum, asterisk asterisk caret asterisk asterisk asterisk. Why did everyone bully him? He was still busy today. Yang Si held the bald writing brush in his mouth and fumbled to take down another brush from the brush holder. He sighed and continued to bury himself in his work. The reactions of the others were similar to Yang Si and Han Yu. Some people snorted and some people were indifferent. Chapter 1399. Jiang Pingji had a big family business, so it was not difficult for her to prepare a betrothal gift. Lu Shi kept saying unfilial son and unfilial son, one after another, but he was also prepared all kinds of betrothal gifts. Cheng Cheng started to save up for his daughter's dowry when she was born. Now that his daughter had grown up, her dowry would only increase. The man's betrothal gift and the woman's dowry were ready, so the next step was easy. According to the usual wedding procedures of the gentry, it would take at least half a year to prepare, but considering the current situation, the wedding had to be brought forward. From the matchmaking to the marriage ceremony, it only took a little more than a month. Time was tight, but the wedding was not. The man's betrothal gift and the woman's dowry surprised the onlookers. The lord doted on his brother. Lu Sanlang's wedding is already like this. When the Duke of Lanting gets married, won't the scene be grand enough to be recorded in the history books? The people were anxious. The Duke of Lanting's brother was already married, so why was the Duke of Lanting not interested? If Jiang Pingji was not a flower on a high mountain, they would even dream of matchmaking for her so that they could get rid of singleness and have a baby as soon as possible. What marriage? Which man in the world has the ability to marry the Duke of Lanting? Isn't it better like this now? A few of the young girls said something back in displeasure. The Duke of Lanting would be tarnished if he married anyone. It was better to marry him himself and let him choose his palace. No one is worthy, but it's not good to be single. Everyone agreed that no one was worthy of Jiang Pingji, but they also disapproved of her being single. Let's not talk about the distant, just the recent. After a decade, who would the Duke of Lanting pass his family business to? Instead of passing it to his own son, would he pass it to the son of a branch family or a brother? Who would be willing to do that? Wasn't it all for themselves and their descendants that one had to fight to the death in order to live one's life? Someone sneered and mocked. Do you guys have nothing better to do? The Duke of Lanting is not married, but that doesn't mean she has no guests, right? In the previous dynasty, Princess Heng Shan kept 54 handsome men. How can the Duke of Lanting lose to her? No matter who the child belongs to, as long as it is the Duke of Lanting's, the bloodline will continue. How can it be given to outsiders? Don't worry about me. The commoners nearby stopped talking. They felt that this excuse was very convincing. At the wedding banquet, the two newlyweds were shy and timid. When Jiang Pingji saw them, she could not help but feel gratified, as if she had a son who had just grown up. Even Lu Shi, who had always been displeased with Lu Zhao, smiled a little today. After forming a family, I'll be an adult. As the head of a family, I have to be prudent in my actions and words. I can't be as reckless and stupid as before. Lu Shi thought for a long time, but the words that came out of his mouth were still full of sarcasm. Lu Zhao said, I will follow father's teachings. Lu Shi gave the gifts he had prepared early in the morning to the two newlyweds. This was prepared by Gu Min many years ago. His feelings towards Lu Zhao were very complicated. At first, he resented Lu Zhao for taking Gu Min's life. After all, he had always thought that his beloved wife had died because she was pregnant with Lu Zhao. In order to protect Lu Zhao and hide from the so-called fate, he had no choice but to remember his son as a concubine's son. He hadn't paid any attention to him for many years. By the time Lu Zhao grew up and became sensible, when he wanted to get close to him and make up for it, this child already had his own ideas and schemes. When Lu Shi found out the real cause of Gu Min's death, not only did he feel guilty facing Lu Zhao, but he also had the urge to run away. He and Gu Min gave birth to 3 sons and a daughter. 2 sons and a daughter died, and only Lu Zhao grew up and married. It would be great if Amin could see this scene. Lu Zhao did not know what his father was thinking. He was the groom today and was so happy that he forgot all his worries. Zhao is a wastrel. As his wife, you should be more tired. Pay more attention to him inside and outside the mansion. If he's disobedient, remember to look for me. Jiang Pingji's words were really blunt. It was as if a basin of cold water had been poured over Lu Zhao's heart. I'll help you beat him up. Lu Zhao, weep 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 oink carrot oink, what a good sister. Was she looking for a younger sibling's wife or marrying him off to a younger brother? Jiang Pingji mocked him coldly, you're such a wastrel. No one will watch your wallet for you. Do you plan to enjoy the limelight at the beginning of the month and be poor at the end of the month? Lu Zhao, this fellow was born to enjoy. He wore the best clothes. Every piece of clothing had to be smoked with expensive aromatherapy before he was willing to wear it. All kinds of accessories were expensive. He had to have 3 vegetables, 3 meat and 3 soup every day for his 3 meals. If he could take a carriage when he went out, he would not get off the ground. The horse that pulled the carriage had to be a fine horse with good blood. He spent 600 strings of coins a month. What did 600 strings of coins mean? Zhang Ping and a few other technical geeks only had an annual salary of 10,000 strings of coins, which was equivalent to an annual salary of 7 million. Lu Zhao, this rascal, spent 7,200 strings of coins a year, which was equivalent to 5,040,000. The prices of goods in this era were not high, but they were not low either. It was much higher than the ancient times in the dimension of the streaming room, but it was still much lower than the modern times in the streaming room. A year's allowance was 5,040,000. Jiang Pingji did not beat this younger brother to death. It was considered true love. Jiang Pingji knew that due to the situation, Lu Zhao could only be content and be a rice worm. It was fine that he was cheated by his younger brother in the past, but if his sister-in-law and future nieces and nephews were added on, Jiang Pingji's private treasury would be emptied. Lu Zhao felt like he had nothing to live for anymore. On the other hand, the bride at the side could not help but laugh. She was no longer as nervous and perturbed as before. The wedding banquet was rigid and boring. Jiang Pingji drank a toast from the newlyweds and looked around in boredom. It had been a long time since such a joyous event had happened in Wanzhou. Everyone drank a little too much. Jiang Pingji also pretended that she could not hold her liquor. She mixed in with a group of drunkards and secretly stole the tipsy Wei Xi out. The two of them stayed in the shadow of the courtyard wall outside the manor. She secretly kissed Wei Xi. I saw that when Zhang and the others' children are already so big today. Time really flies. Wei Xi raised his hand and rubbed his flushed face. He forced himself to walk steadily. My lord, you want them too? He knew that Jiang Pingji liked children very much. It was like that in her previous life. Jiang Pingji sighed. I want them, but you won't give them to me. Wei Xi said, the timing isn't right. I'm afraid that even if I'm willing, my lord won't accept them. Wei Xi was both expectant and a little repulsed by the issue of children. Would the children in this life be the Jiang Yan and Wei Tsong of his memories? Jiang Pingji said, that's true. You're so good. How can I bear to expose you to the enemy's eyes? Wei Xi tilted his head and looked at her in confusion. He did not understand what she meant. Jiang Pingji said, you'll know in the future. I'll send you back to the manor. Remember to drink some hangover soup. She sent Wei Xi back to the manor. She hugged and kissed him for a while before leaving reluctantly. Jiang Pingji said, "Time passes faster. When the time comes there won't be so many worries." Wei Xi listened to her words and could not help but laugh. The moon was high in the sky and night fell. On this quiet night, something happened that made Jiang Pingji furious. Chapter 1400. Langjun, why are you looking at me like this? The bride's face was flushed and her watery black eyes were shimmering. Lu Zhao couldn't help but look away shyly. "Madam, you are very beautiful tonight." Lu Zhao said uncomfortably, "The most beautiful person I have ever seen." The red candles flickered around. Lu Zhao glanced at the gourd containing the nuptial wine. The gourd was divided into two, and the stem was connected by a red thread. There was a cup of sake on each side. He swallowed his saliva unnaturally and awkwardly invited the newly appointed wife to join him for a toast. "It's getting late. Madam, why don't you drink first, undress and go to bed early?" As soon as he finished speaking, the blush of shyness spread from his neck to his ears and forehead. A little sweat came out. The bride sitting opposite him smiled reservedly and said in a soft and shy voice, "I will listen to Langjun." The two picked up half of the gourd and tilted their upper bodies slightly. It seemed like a simple action, but Lu Zhao was so nervous that even his fingers were trembling. "I finished?" Lu Zhao grabbed his sleeves and glanced at the bed behind the screen. "Madam, why don't you rest?" The bride smiled and nodded. Lu Zhao seemed to be greatly encouraged and went forward to carry her. Fortunately, his wife in his arms was not heavy. Otherwise, Lu Zhao might not be able to carry her. Not long after, there was the sound of clothes sliding in the bridal room, and the slightly ambiguous subtle movements of the newlyweds. It was the first time for Lu Zhao to eat meat. Obviously, he didn't know what temperance was. After tossing and turning for a long time, he held the soft body in his arms and prepared to rest. The two newlyweds hadn't slept for long when there was a burst of hurried and panicked footsteps outside, waking up Lu Zhao who had just fallen asleep. "Madam, go to sleep first. I will go and have a look." Lu Zhao comforted his new wife, took the cloak hanging on the side, put it on and got up to open the door. "Don't you want to see what day it is?" Lu Zhao was sleepy and tired at this moment, so he couldn't control his temper. He felt wrong being called on his wedding night. "What happened?" "If it's not a big deal, I will find you tomorrow." The servant hurriedly said, "Langjun, something big happened." "What's the big deal?" Lu Zhao was a little clear-headed at this moment, and an ominous premonition flashed in his heart. The servant was so anxious that he quickly reported the news, scaring Lu Zhao so much that he no longer felt sleepy. Wei Xi was assassinated and his corpse was left at the entrance of the alley. Lu Zhao's legs turned to jelly when he heard this. He more or less knew what kind of person Wei Xi was. He's dead? Who assassinated him? Lu Zhao didn't dare to imagine his sister's expression right now. Everyone in Wanzhou knew that he was one of the Duke of Lanting's trusted aides. No one expected that he would be assassinated on the night of the Duke of Lanting's brother's wedding. His bloodied body was dumped in an alley less than half a street away from Lu Zhao's mansion. Who could have predicted this? Lu Zhao remembered the heat and hurriedly went back to his room to change into regular clothes. Before he left, he told his wife's dowry maids to take good care of her. Prepare the carriage and head to Mr. Wei Xi's residence. By the time Lu Zhao arrived, there were many people patrolling the vicinity of Wei Xi's mansion. The mansion was brightly lit. "Sister, Mr. Wei," Lu Zhao wasn't stopped. When he arrived at the main hall of Wei Xi's mansion, he found many familiar faces sitting or standing inside. 90% of Jiang Pingji's trusted aides were present. The few who weren't present were shining in other prefectures and devoting their limited energy to unlimited work. "What's the matter?" Jiang Pingji heard the commotion and looked up at him. "Why are you here instead of accompanying the newlyweds in the bridal chamber?" Lu Zhao was shocked when he saw Jiang Pingji's appearance. His right leg, which had just stepped out, froze inside the door. "Sister, I heard that Mr. Wei was assassinated. I came over to take a look. Has the murderer been caught?" Jiang Pingji stood in the hall. Her long hair draped over her shoulders. Other than a loose outer robe covering her shoulders, she only wore crescent white pajamas inside. The pajamas were dyed red with human blood. Even though most of the blood had coagulated and slowly turned from bright red to dark red, it was still a strong visual impact. Lu Zhao knew who the blood belonged to. It was either the assassin who assassinated Wei Xi or Wei Xi himself. "Murderer? I didn't catch him." Jiang Pingji held the god-slaying saber in her arms. Her expression was exceptionally cold. Her eyes, which were clearly black and white, gave people the illusion that they were filled with blood. Lu Xiao could feel an aura known as murderous intent from afar. It scared him so much that the hairs on his back stood on end. Mr. Wei, sister. My condolences. Lu Xiao carefully tiptoed into the room and found a safer corner to sit down. He didn't dare to get close to Jiang Pingji and ask for a beating. Jiang Pingji, who was in such a state, could decapitate a person with a slap. Lu Xiao didn't want her to be a widow right after he got married. Jiang Pingji said coldly, "My condolences? He's not dead yet." Lu Xiao's eyes lit up. He's not dead? Then why did the servants say that Wei Ci was assassinated and his body was left at the entrance of the alley? After a while, the doctor came back with a medical box to report. The wound on Wei Ci's body wasn't fatal, but he had lost a lot of blood. If Jiang Pingji hadn't discovered it early and let him bleed for half an hour, he wouldn't have been able to survive. Now he was lucky to be alive. Who's so vicious? Master Yuanjing said angrily, "It's obvious that they want Zixiao dead." The owners of the surrounding residences were all high-ranking officials in Wanzhou. The security outside was stricter. There would be people patrolling every quarter of an hour. After Wei Ci was assassinated, he was left at the entrance of the alley not long after the previous patrol team left. There was still a quarter of an hour before the next patrol team arrived. When the patrol team found Wei Ci, his body would probably be cold. No one questioned why Jiang Pingji was the first to find Wei Ci. Even if they did, she wouldn't explain in detail. "Master, it's getting late. I've sent people to keep an eye on Zixiao. I'll inform you as soon as the murderer is caught." Jiang Pingji persuaded Master Yuanjing to go back to the residence and rest. After all, he was considered old. Jiang Pingji couldn't bear for him to stay up late. She was enough to keep an eye on Wei Ci. The so-called murderer wouldn't dare to come again. No. Maybe there wasn't a murderer like everyone thought. After Jiang Pingji sent Wei Ci back to the residence, she returned to her home. She had just taken a shower and changed into her pajamas when she realized that Wei Ci had left the residence. Not long after, she noticed that Wei Ci's breath of life was abnormally declining. She immediately rushed over with the god-slaying sword. From beginning to end, apart from Wei Ci, who was lying in a pool of blood, and the iron-eating beast that was squatting by his feet and scratching the ground, she didn't notice any other person's breath. Jiang Pingji saw Wei Ci's appearance and suddenly had the illusion that she had fallen into an ice house. It was as if the blood in her body was about to condense into frost. The iron-eating beast quickly crawled to her feet and hugged her leg, crying out non-stop. Jiang Pingji tore the sleeves of her pajamas into strips and quickly stopped Wei Ci's bleeding. She carried him back and called the doctor over. People who heard the news rushed over one after another. Everyone was shocked by the incident. Chapter 1401. Everyone looked at the situation and the atmosphere became more and more depressing. Lu Shi was not afraid of Jiang Pingji's stare. He entered the room and asked, "The whole city is on alert. Has the murderer been caught? Don't you know in your heart whether we can catch him or not?" Jiang Pingji asked coldly. Lu Shi smiled faintly. His eyes were filled with tolerance as if he was looking at an unreasonable child. "You should go back too. We have work to do tomorrow." Jiang Pingji sent everyone back and ignored Lu Xiao's reluctant and worried gaze. She went straight to Wei Ci's room. Lu Shi followed closely behind her. They walked through the long corridor one after the other. Jiang Pingji opened her mouth. "One of the things I hate the most in my life is being threatened." Lu Shi put his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "You don't look like it. I thought you would lose control and kill someone. It seems that Wei Ci is not that important to you. At least not important enough for you to lose control and lose your mind." Was Wei Ci not important enough in her heart? No, it was just because Jiang Pingji was too rational. Jiang Pingji's emotions were all covered up by her calm face. "Are you gloating over my misfortune?" Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes at Lu Shi. Her eyes were filled with undisguised killing intent. Lu Shi said, "I warned you before not to be fooled by your own cleverness and lose the one you love." "What did you say?" The slap in the face came too fast like a tornado. If they found Wei Ci a little later, he would be a corpse now. "I said that guy was threatening me," Jiang Pingji said. "You are the only one who is fooled by his own cleverness." "I am not." Lu Shi said, "You are still stubborn." They talked and entered Wei Ci's room one after another. The maid who was taking care of Wei Ci had just left with a basin of hot water that was stained with blood. The wound on Zixiao's body was not left by the so-called assassin. Jiang Pingji looked at Lu Shi coldly. He did it himself. Lu Shi was shocked. It seemed that he did not hear Jiang Pingji clearly. He did it himself. Jiang Pingji sat on the side of Wei Xi's bed and said, I've been watching Zixiao remotely. When he left the mansion there was no one around him. Apart from him, there was no one else at the entrance of the alley. When I arrived, I didn't sense any other unfamiliar aura either. She glanced at Wei Xi and continued, his wound is also evidence. Whether it's the position of the blade, the marks on the wound, the depth of the wound, or the strength of the knife, all of it shows that he did it to himself. You know, Zixiao doesn't have the habit of hurting himself. Lu Shi immediately thought of his past experience and couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Could it be that that thing is controlling his body? Jiang Pingji asked. Other than that, are there any other explanations? Lu Shi sighed. That thing is well hidden. If she really wanted to harm the people around you, you wouldn't be able to stop her. Jiang Pingji said, he's threatening me. This is his warning and he's testing who my weakness is. He hit the nail on the head. After all, Wei Ci was an ordinary person. Jiang Pingji was not afraid of the so-called main body of the system, but he was not. Lu Shi asked, what do we do now? As the two of them were talking, Jiang Pingji noticed that something was moving around her feet. The Iron Eater opened its mouth and spat out two objects. They fell to the ground with a crisp sound. Jiang Pingji's gaze froze and she picked them up. Zixiao took them off when he was bathing? One was the yin-yang jade pendant she gave him, and the other was the seal given by Jinren Liuru. Where's the other seal? Of course, the Iron Eater didn't understand what she was talking about. It lay next to Wei Ci sadly and couldn't help but stick out its tongue to lick his fingertips. Jiang Pingji looked around and found another seal that Wei Ci had consecrated. She found the second seal in Changye, but Wei Ci felt that it was a burial object of his ancestors and shouldn't be carried around, so he worshipped it respectfully. She looked at the three small objects in her palm and sighed helplessly. The three objects had the effect of suppressing evil spirits and preventing evil spirits from invading. Jiang Pingji let Wei Ci wear them to protect him. Unexpectedly, Lu Shi asked, what did you find? Jiang Pingji asked him, you guessed it? The position of the system's main body, right? Lu Shi raised one of his eyebrows and said in a low voice, Wei Ci is just one of my guesses. Jiang Pingji said, these three objects have the effect of suppressing evil spirits and preventing them from appearing. It seems that the stray dog was previously trapped in Zixiao's body. Fortunately, it escaped tonight. Before it escaped, it controlled Zixiao's body to injure itself to show off to me. Lu Shi said, that seems to be the case. Jiang Pingji sneered and said, of course, there may be another possibility. Another possibility? Jiang Pingji sneered and said, it was originally hiding in someone else's body and has been secretly looking for my weakness and weakness. Taking advantage of this opportunity, it sneaked into Zixiao's body and caused the so-called injuries to confuse our vision and judgment. Lu Shi raised his eyebrows. No matter what speculation it is, it's not a good thing for you. If it was the first possibility, the enemy was in the dark and Jiang Pingji was out in the open. It would be too passive. If it was the second possibility, and Wei Ci was her precious sweetheart, even if she had the god-slaying sword, she wouldn't be able to kill Wei Ci. Even if Jiang Pingji could do it, the system's main body was a spiritual mass without a physical body. Wei Ci's death wouldn't affect it. Jiang Pingji raised her hands and gently tied two seals on both sides of Wei Ci's waist. She also put the yin-yang jade pendant on him. No matter what the situation is, it's naturally not a good thing. Jiang Pingji asked him, which one do you think it is? It's hard to say. That guy has always been cunning. Lu Shi said, are you just going to swallow this anger? It was really not her style. Jiang Pingji sneered and pulled out the god-slaying sword. She said, how is that possible? Lu Shi was so shocked that he took a step back. You want to kill me? Jiang Pingji said, of course not. Although I have killed many allies, it was after the end of our cooperation. After that, Jiang Pingji sat down beside Wei Ci and closed her eyes to immerse herself in her mind. In the empty mind, the two spiritual masses of the subsystem floated quietly. Sensing Jiang Pingji's arrival, the two subsystems woke up at the same time. They were imprisoned by Jiang Pingji and didn't know what was happening in the outside world. At that moment, they looked at Jiang Pingji with the god-slaying sword in her hand. The two subsystems were so scared that their hair stood on end. It was impossible for ordinary weapons to appear in this special area, but the god-slaying sword was an exception. They had a natural fear of the god-slaying sword. What are you doing here? System number 1 stammered. Chapter 1402. Again. Subsystem number 1 said angrily, Jiang Pingji, you haven't had your period for a few years. Has all the blood rushed to your brain? Subsystem number 2 was also very timid, but since subsystem number 1 spoke up to embolden it, it was fine for it to jump out and say a few words. Last time you came to threaten us, you also said you would send us to the Western Paradise. Do you really think the Western Paradise belongs to you? The two subsystems cooperated to taunt her. Jiang Pengji had imprisoned them for many years without doing anything, so they gradually felt at ease. Even if Jiang Pengji came with the god-slaying sword, they still didn't believe that she would really do anything to them. Is she not afraid of the main body of the system? Is she willing to idle in the streaming room of 2 dimensions? The thunder is louder than the rain. Whoever is afraid is a puppy. The subsystems silently encouraged themselves, but Jiang Pingji, who should have been in a frenzy, only smiled coldly. Their eyelids twitched and they panicked for no reason. Jiang Pingji stood not far away. The god-slaying sword was unsheathed, and the shiny blade emitted a chilling cold light. Subsystem number 1 said dryly, Hey, give us some reaction. We are very nervous when you are like this. Jiang Pingji tilted her head and sneered. Her black, shoulder-length hair slid down her shoulders to the front, and her thick black hair covered half of her face. If something happens to you, your main body will feel it, right? Unlike her usual energetic voice, Jiang Pingji's voice sounded more like rusty blunt weapons rubbing against each other, and it made one's scalp tingle. The two subsystems were frightened by this situation, and they even had the urge to hug each other and shiver to keep each other warm. The two subsystems pouted and said, How would we know? If you want to know, why don't you try? Jiang Pingji snorted and agreed, What you said makes sense. Subsystem number 1 was stunned for a moment, and the ominous feeling grew stronger. What did she mean? What did she mean? Of course she meant to kill you. You're crazy. Before subsystem number 1 could scream and struggle to escape, Jiang Pingji had already approached with her sword. The god-slaying sword, which was usually ordinary, actually glowed with a faint blue light, and it pulsed with a strange, chilling energy. This strange energy did not have much effect on ordinary creatures, but it was fatal to virtual creatures that were a combination of pure energy and spirit. Subsystem number 1 was only a part of the main body. Even the main body of the system did not dare to go head-on with the god-slaying saber, much less little slice. I don't care what the so-called main body of the system wants to do or what he's plotting against me. Whether he wants to steal my work or take my life. I don't care. I'll just deal with whatever comes my way. Of all the things he shouldn't have done, he shouldn't have touched one of my people, and he should have never touched one of them. Jiang Pingji pulled her sword back and realized that system number 1 did not dissipate as she had expected. The concentrated spiritual energy turned into thousands of rays of blue light and was devoured by the god-slaying sword. A part of the tattered totem appeared on the blade that was originally shiny and clean. She glanced at him and sneered. That plain patrol merchant had given him the god-slaying saber because he wanted to make use of it. The god-slaying saber didn't kill subsystem number 1 completely. Instead, it erased its mental wave and absorbed its mental energy. System number 2 saw it and roared in a shrill voice, Jiang Pingji, what did you do? She actually did it? Jiang Pingji glanced at it and said coldly, This saber has been tampered with. It seems to only be used to imprison. It doesn't seem to make a difference whether you're imprisoned here or in the saber. Why are you acting like this? Can't you see your friends later? Imprison my ass. System number 2 roared in despair. You don't know anything. The god-slaying saber did not completely kill system number 1, but it erased its independent consciousness and absorbed all the pure spiritual energy that had been stripped away. This explanation was a little complicated, so let's use a simple example. Subsystem number 1 was a living person with self-consciousness. The god-slaying saber wiped away its self-consciousness, beat its soul back to its most primitive form and absorbed it. Jiang Pengji looked at its reaction and her gloomy mood improved a little. Your reaction is so intense. It seems like the god-slaying saber's damage to system number 1 is more serious than killing it directly? System number 2 suppressed the answer that slipped out of its mouth. Jiang Pingji's guess was correct. There's no hurry. I'll reunite you with it now. She sneered and drew her saber. The blue light on the saber was more dazzling than before. It swallowed system number 2's screams in an instant. When the god-slaying saber absorbed system number 2, Jiang Pingji examined the saber with rapt attention and found that there was an additional pure spiritual energy inside. Apart from this pure spiritual energy, she also found a faint white fog-like object nearby. There was an extremely thin tube between the two, like a straight straw. The white fog-like object was trying its best to absorb the spiritual energy through this tube. Every time it absorbed, the white fog-like object would tremble and make a weak bang sound. She studied it for a while but did not make any progress, so she simply withdrew from the mental brain domain. Jiang Pingji suddenly opened her eyes. She acutely smelled that the smell of blood in the air had increased. After a while, she heard Lu Shi's rather helpless voice. "If you're awake, why don't you come and take a look? There's something wrong with your little lover." Jiang Pingji shuddered and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong with Zixiao?" Wei Xi's face was much paler than before. Large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. The sweat rolled down and wet the pillow. He looked like he was in extreme pain. If Lu Shi had not pressed him down to prevent him from moving, the wound that had just been bandaged would have burst open again. "I don't know. Not long after you closed your eyes to meditate, he almost jumped up like a carp." Lu Shi had just finished speaking and could not help but complain, "This person looks like a woman, but he's still a man. He's much stronger than ordinary women." Jiang Pingji asked Lu Shi, "And then?" "He vomited blood. Didn't you see that half of his face was covered in blood? He looks like he's possessed." As he spoke, Lu Shi leaped over and sat on Wei Xi's body, holding his limbs down. Jiang Pingji glanced at his posture and resisted the urge to stab Lu Shi. "I just killed 2 system clones. The main body had a premonition. He couldn't touch me, so he targeted Zixiao." Lu Shi suddenly reacted and said in surprise, "So, that guy is now on Wei Xi's body?" Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes at him. "If that's not the case, why would I hang all 3 things on Zixiao? The 2 seals and the yin-yang jade pendant could all imprison the main body of the system." Jiang Pingji was planning to close the door and beat the dog. Lu Shi broke into a cold sweat. Chapter 1403. Jiang Pingji said, "He can't kill Zixiao. If he can't kill him, then he can do this?" Lu Shi said, "Be careful, he's too smart for his own good. If he can't even kill Wei Xi, how can he keep his dignity as a god?" Being in a relationship with Jiang Pingji was like forming an alliance with her. He had to be mentally prepared to be killed by her at any time. Lu Shi suddenly sympathized with Wei Xi. It was fine if he was unlucky, but how could he be so blind that he fell for such a woman? "You don't understand. It's better for the main body to choose someone else than Zixiao." Lu Shi wanted to ask more, but Jiang Pingji said, "I'm going to settle the score with that thing. Be filial to him. If anything happens to him, don't blame me for disregarding the father-daughter relationship and killing you." Lu Shi was speechless. In any case, the father and daughter have been filial for so many years. How could they suddenly fall out with each other? Couldn't they have some father-daughter friendship? "What are you going to do?" Lu Shi forced himself to calm down. Jiang Pingji said, "The main body of the system has no physical body. In theory, it can only rely on special carriers such as the yin-yang jade. But I've confirmed that the yin-yang jade that I gave Zixiao is not the carrier of the main body of the system. If I can't find its carrier, this operation won't kill it, but it's good to collect some interest. I'll invade Zixiao's spirit later to find the main body of evil." Jiang Pingji sat down with her sword and closed her eyes. Lu Shi's eyes widened not long after. What did he see? He saw a slender and voluptuous mature woman in a neat military uniform appear next to Jiang Pingji. She seemed to see him too. She nodded slightly and turned into a ball of blue light that disappeared between Wei Xi's eyebrows. After a while, Wei Xi, who was struggling unconsciously, calmed down. Lu Shi was relieved. At the same time, Jiang Pingji's spirit body passed through a thick fog. She faintly saw a bright but not dazzling light coming from ahead. After crossing this layer of light, the originally chaotic and empty scene immediately turned into a bustling market. Jiang Pingji frowned. "Is this Zixiao's spiritual brain?" She turned and jumped onto a nearby building. With a light tap of her toes, she left the bustling market with a few leaps and ran toward the familiar scent. Jiang Pingji took a few glances and determined that this was Wei Xi's past life, or rather, the most precious memory in his heart. Everyone had their own mental brain region. Every mental brain region was a virtual world, and it was also a reflection of one's inner world. Jiang Pingji's mental brain domain was very simple. It was filled with active mental energy, monotonous and boring. However, it was different for Wei Xi. This was the first time she had seen such a vivid and exquisite mental virtual world. Jiang Pingji could do that too, but she couldn't mimic the smell of sunlight as well as Wei Xi could. After all, she was a martial artist who valued violence above all else. She could fight, but she had no artistic talent at all. "Why are you leaning on the wall of my house?" As she was lost in thought, Jiang Pingji heard the soft voice of a child coming from under the wall. Jiang Pingji was surprised. She looked in the direction of the sound and found a fat boy with tears on his face sitting in the corner of the wall. "Are you talking to me?" Jiang Pingji pointed at herself. The boy could see her? Could it be that the boy in front of her was an extremely important person to Wei Ci, so he came alive in his spiritual world? Jiang Pingji noticed that many people's faces in the market were very blurry. This meant that Wei Ci's memory of them was very shallow. The boy in front of her looked delicate and cute. His eyes were dark and bright under his thick eyelashes, and Jiang Pingji liked him. "Of course I'm talking to you. Are you from a foreign country?" The boy raised his hand to wipe away the tears on his face. His eyes were as red as a rabbit's. "A foreign country?" Jiang Pingji lowered her head and glanced at her attire. She had not worn the federal military uniform for a long time. She pulled out the god-slaying sword and used the reflection of the blade to clearly see her current appearance. It was not the familiar face of Lu Shi, but the face she had used for more than 40 years in her past life. Jiang Pingji's beauty in her past life was needless to say. Every time the army recruited new recruits, the adjutant liked to use her refined image to deceive the new recruits who graduated from the military school. Even if she had a cold and aloof face, outsiders would feel that she was exuding strong hormones. When she wore a solemn and orderly military uniform, outsiders would also feel that it was a uniform temptation. In the words of the salted fish in the streaming room, she could rely on her face to make a living, but she had to rely on her fists. The only difference was probably the color of her hair. Jiang Pingji twirled a lock of hair with her fingers and frowned slightly. Her original hair color was pure black, but now it was a warm and flamboyant fiery red. Coupled with the exotic vixen face, it was no wonder that the boy suspected that she was from a foreign country. Speaking of which, how did her hair change color? "I'm from a foreign country. Do you know where this place is?" The boy was a little depressed. "Of course I'm from my home." Jiang Pingji looked at him and asked, "This is a very remote corner. Why are you here? Where are the servants?" The boy's attire seemed simple, but it was made of fine silk. It was not something that a child from an ordinary family could afford. She did not know which of her words had touched the boy's sore spot, but he actually cried again. Jiang Pingji could only carry him and comfort him. The boy was not afraid of strangers. Instead, he felt that Jiang Pingji made him feel very warm and at ease. Who was Jiang Pingji? If she wanted to get information out of someone, she would definitely be able to get information out of the coffins that the person's ancestors were sleeping in, let alone a boy. Jiang Pingji won the boy's trust with a few words. The boy's nickname was Fusho. He had just celebrated his 4th birthday a while ago. His father named him Kong. That day was the memorial day of the boy's mother, a concubine in the backyard who was not valued at all. The boy saw that his father did not pay any attention to the memorial day of his mother at all. He went to the palace early in the morning to teach the princess's studies. He felt very sad. He held a piece of silver in his hand and planned to sneak out of the manor to buy some offerings for his mother so that she would not be too lonely in the underworld. Who knew that he was small and weak? Even if he secretly got rid of the servants, he could not leave the manor. He spent a long time piling up a few stones. When he stepped on them, he could not reach the wall of the courtyard. Instead, he fell down. That was why he cried for a long time until Jiang Pingji appeared on the wall. "Why don't I bring you to buy it?" Jiang Pingji touched the boy's head. So this was Fusho. He worshipped his birth mother on the memorial day. Wasn't this child afraid that his real mother would spank him? Jiang Pingji took Fusho out of the manor and bought paper money, candles and fruits for the memorial. She looked at him hugging the basket in satisfaction and found it funny. Fusho's birth mother was just a concubine. Her memorial tablet was not qualified to be placed in the ancestral hall. It could only be placed in a small courtyard in the corner of the manor. Jiang Pingji was smiling as she watched the boy burn paper money for his birth mother, when a flurry of footsteps came from outside. She turned over and leaped onto the beam of the roof. The door suddenly opened. Fusho. The man who came in was obviously anxious. Seeing that the boy was squatting on the ground, he suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. "Father, father?" The boy was so scared that he stood up and hung his head aggrievedly. Without waiting for the man to say anything, the girl who was about 10 years old raised her eyebrows and said with a smile. Chapter 1404. Grand Tutor? Zixiao? Jiang Pingji secretly looked down and saw Wei Ci, who was much more mature. Wei Ci looked like he was in his 30s. He had the charm of a mature man. He was dressed in a blue scholar's robe and had a tall and straight posture. His dark eyes were still familiar to her. But Wei Ci had grown a beard, and his beard was neatly trimmed. Although it was not thick and did not look sloppy, it covered up some of his beauty. He looked more mature and serious and less youthful and energetic. For Jiang Pingji, who had a strong preference for good looks, she still liked the fair and beardless Wei Ci. What was so good about having a beard? It was easy to dirty the corners of one's mouth when eating, and it was troublesome to clean up. It would stab when they were intimate. Jiang Pingji squatted on the beam and muttered to herself. The three people below did not seem to notice her. They talked on their own. Fu was anxious and fearful. When he heard a familiar voice, he suddenly raised his head and looked at the girl with tears in his eyes. He bowed to the girl with a sobbing voice. Fu pays his respects to Her Highness. The girl smiled gently. You don't have to be so polite in private. Was Fu paying respects to his birth mother, just now? Even if she was dressed in luxurious clothes and had a high status, she was like a cute and gentle big sister next door. Fu was immediately cured. Fu nodded with grievance. His little face was miserable and his white and fat fingers were twisted into a ball. Without his father's permission, he went out of the manor to buy offerings for his lowly birth mother and burned them in the courtyard. It was a big taboo. Now he was caught red-handed by the crown princess who was visiting. Fu did not know how angry his father would be. Fu was young, but he was emotionally sensitive. Just from the servants in the manor avoiding his birth mother like snakes and scorpions, he knew that his father did not like his birth mother. He did not even remember the day of her death. He did not want his birth mother to be lonely in the underworld, but he did not want to be hated by his father. He was in a dilemma. Fu is very filial. The crown princess smiled and rubbed the little knot on his head. She said gently, "It's nothing to pay respects in private. However, there are many ways to express filial piety. If outsiders see it, it will inevitably damage the reputation of the Grand Tutor." Fu said with tears in his eyes, "Will that happen?" In the past few days, the people have been busy preparing for His Majesty's birthday. That is a day for the whole country to celebrate. The crown princess sighed and said, "You burn sacrifices in private in the mansion. Those who know about it will say that your filial piety is commendable, but those who don't will think that you are evil. Do you understand?" How would Fu know about this? He even found out about his mother's death anniversary by chance. Although the birthday was an important festival, he was still young, so he only knew that on this day the mansion was particularly happy. Even his father, who was always as cold as water, would show a little smile. Last year he even took him to the night market to see the lanterns. Now that Her Highness had mentioned it, he knew that the day of his birth mother's death had coincided with His Majesty's birthday. Fu scratched his small face and apologized to Her Royal Highness sister. He seriously said that he had learned a lesson. That's right. Burning joss paper money for the dead is not filial. Fu should listen to Grand Tutor's words and learn seriously from him. When you grow up, you will be a talented person. If your biological mother knows this, she will be happy. Don't you think so? Fu nodded solemnly. Your Highness. Wei Ci, who was on the side, interrupted the conversation between the two with slight disapproval. Why is Grand Tutor so cautious? If Fu becomes a talent in the future, will Grand Tutor be able to restrain him for a lifetime? The smile on Crown Princess Changxing's face faded slightly. She said seriously, I treat him like a younger brother. I will take care of him in the future. Wei Ci's expression was complicated. How could Fu know about the eye contact between Crown Princess and his father? He clenched his fist and said, then Fu should be as knowledgeable as father, become a famous scholar, and be a Grand Tutor in the future. The smile on Changxing's face was slightly stiff. She pinched Fu chubby face with regret. This is difficult. Fengyu is much more knowledgeable than you. Even if you want to be a Grand Tutor, you have to win against him. Fu pouted in frustration. He knew who Fengyu was, the sickly man who always pinched his face behind his back and said that he was fat. He didn't like Fengyu, but his father often praised Fengyu in front of him. This was a great blow to his young heart. Why must I win against him? Fu said, he is so much older than Fu. It's not fair. Princess Changxing crossed her arms over her chest and said with a smile, because I decided on him. Fu said, because he is the study companion of your Highness's sister? Changxing said, it's more or less related to this, But the most important thing is that he is liked by me. Fusho said dejectedly, is Fusho not liked by your highness's sister? Changxing rubbed Fusho's chubby face. You silly child, my liking for Fusho is different from my liking for Fengyu. Isn't liking just liking? Of course Fusho didn't understand. The only two people who understood couldn't say anything. They could only wear a cold smile on their faces at the same time. Wei Ci secretly planned to settle the score with Feng Zhen. How did he teach his son? How old was his highness this year? Jiang Pingji planned to provoke Wan Xiu, or later, and strangle Feng Zhen's pocket money so that he would completely become a sadhu. Changxing smiled and coaxed Fusho. She asked Wei Ci to take Fusho to change into clean clothes and prepare to go out to play. Her Majesty was born on the flower festival, so the day of her birth coincided with the festival. There were many and lively activities among the people. It was one of the most lively festivals of the year. Can you come down now? After coaxing Wei Ci and Fusho away, the smile on Changxing's face suddenly disappeared. She looked straight at the beam. Jiang Pingji jumped down gracefully. Changxing subconsciously took half a step back. When she saw Jiang Pingji's face, her eyes flashed with amazement. A foreigner? What's your purpose in hiding on the beam? Her facial features were different from the Central Plains style. She had flamboyant fiery red hair on her head. It was like a bonfire on her head. She didn't have to look to know that this was not the appearance that a person from the Central Plains should have. Changxing wanted to ask in detail, but she suddenly saw the god-slaying sword on her waist. She couldn't help but be furious. A thief who trespassed into the palace. It was one thing to steal things, but to steal from the head of a country. This foreigner was very bold. Without another word, Changxing wanted to make a move. The guards guarding outside the house also rushed in. Jiang Pingji of course fled immediately. Changxing was young, but her martial arts were extraordinary. However, her skills were not enough. Jiang Pingji fled. Changxing stared in the direction she escaped with a complicated gaze. Send people to block the various city gates. Once you find this red-haired foreigner, capture him immediately. If he resists, kill him without mercy. Her appearance was so striking that she could be recognized wherever she went. She actually sneaked into the palace to steal her mother's sword. This thief was extremely bold. Fusho greets Her Majesty. By the time Changxing ran to meet up with Wei Ci and the rest, she happened to see Fusho bowing with all his might, and almost fell forward. The Her Majesty that Fusho spoke of was a rather beautiful woman. She looked like she was in her early 30s. She smiled and supported Fusho. She lifted him up and weighed him. Fusho shyly covered his face with his chubby hands. Fusho can walk by himself. Chapter 1405. Changxing. She really did not want to admit that the woman who looked like a human trafficker was her mother. Mother, god-slaying. Changxing stepped forward and was about to salute when she suddenly saw the long saber worn by the woman's waist. A trace of astonishment flashed across her eyes. Two god-slaying sabers? Could it be that the foreign woman did not steal her mother's saber and she misunderstood? That was true. The palace was heavily guarded and her mother was strong. It was almost impossible to break through the layers of obstacles and steal the god-slaying saber. What's wrong? The woman asked her with a smile. Changxing recounted everything that had happened just now in great detail and said with slight embarrassment, I was reckless and almost caused an unjust case. It's good to know one's mistake and correct it. Just send someone to withdraw the order. If you meet him, send someone to give him some silver as compensation. Changxing whispered. The four of them got on the carriage. Wei Ci took the initiative to put a curtain hat on the woman's face. Fusho sat on the woman's lap. He seemed to be very used to this kind of intimate interaction. He asked with a smile, Your Majesty, where are we going? The flower festival is also a birthday. We are going out for a spring parade and have fun with the people. The woman smiled and said, Does Fusho not like to go? Fusho pursed his lips and said, Of course not, but... His eyes wandered and looked pitifully at Crown Princess Changxing as if asking if he could say it. Changxing said, Today seems to be the death anniversary of Fusho's birth mother. He is very filial, I am afraid it is not good for him to play freely. The woman's expression froze for a moment. I see Fusho is very filial. Touching the small knot on Fusho's head, Fusho showed a shy smile. For him, His Majesty's praise was as precious as his father's. One sentence could make him happy for a long time. There were many tourists outside. Wei Ci and the others were dressed plainly. The woman and Changxing wore a curtain hat to cover their faces. No one discovered their identity. Fusho insisted on walking on his own. He held the woman in one hand and Wei Ci in the other. He ran 2 steps with a smile and suddenly jumped up. Fly. Changxing followed a step or 2 behind the 3. Watching Fusho swing, she could not help but curl her lips and say, childish. Fusho didn't hear her words and continued to play. The 2 adults were also happy to cooperate. The woman looked back at her daughter and said with a smile, Changxing wants to try too? Changxing looked at her mother, the grand tutor, and herself. She coldly rejected this unreasonable suggestion. Although she was still young, she had grown very quickly. She was almost as tall as a 13 or 14-year-old boy. With his height, how could he imitate Fusho, who was fat and short, to play on the swing? The 4 of them were like an ordinary family taking a stroll in the spring. When they were tired, they sat on the ground and tasted the food they had prepared early in the morning. Fusho would eat independently, but he was not skilled. He often smeared food residue on the corner of his mouth, and the woman tirelessly helped him wipe it. Changxing looked at the 2 of them with mixed feelings until she handed over a handkerchief that emitted the fragrance of honey locust. Grand tutor. Changxing called out in slight embarrassment. Wei Ci could not help but smile. He picked a few of Changxing's favorite foods for her. Grand tutor, I am no longer a child. Although he said so, his actions were honest and he didn't hesitate to eat. The Grand Tutor's culinary skills could crush the royal chefs. In my eyes, your highness is always a distance away from adulthood. As soon as he finished speaking, Fusho also noticed the situation. He shouted and opened his mouth, Fusho wants it too. Ah, no, the Grand Tutor prepared it for me. Why are you snatching it? Changxing finished the plate in 2 or 3 bites. Fusho saw the situation and immediately gave up. Hum hum hum, hum carrot hum, Her Highness's sister could not argue with him. The family of 4 was eating. Changxing caught a glimpse of a fiery red color from the corner of her eyes. Her gaze froze. That foreigner is here too? The woman asked in surprise. Foreigner? Which one? Changxing pointed. Sure enough, she saw a voluptuous and strangely dressed woman leaning on the treetop with her arms crossed. While they were looking at Jiang Pingji, she was also looking at them. The knife in her arms is really similar to the god-slaying knife. No wonder you mistook it. The woman saw Jiang Pingji's face. She had no other reaction except for some admiration. Fusho was stunned for a moment. He suddenly said, This big sister helped Fusho just now. If she had not carried him over the wall to buy offerings, it would have been impossible for Fusho's small body to climb over the wall and leave the manor. Among the 4 people, only Wei Ci's reaction was slightly strange. His expression stiffened for a moment, but this strangeness was fleeting. It was difficult to see with the naked eye. If Jiang Pingji's observation was not excellent, she might have missed it. She said with a smile, After searching for a long time, it turns out to be here. You stayed in Zixiao's spiritual world and disguised as him. You're obviously bullying him because he doesn't know how to use his spiritual energy to fight back, right? Without waiting for Wei Ci to say anything, Jiang Pingji directly pulled out her knife and rushed down from the tree. The blade went straight for his face. The woman and Changxing at the side saw the situation and were horrified. They seemed to want to stop her. Jiang Pingji's expression was slightly cold. She shouted at the 2 of them, Get lost. Don't ruin my plan. As soon as she finished speaking, the originally lively place instantly became silent. The surrounding tourists turned into smoke and disappeared without a trace. Only Jiang Pingji and Wei Ci were left. Her blade did not have the slightest hindrance. She slashed at Wei Ci's vital parts. It was obvious that she wanted to kill him. Wei Ci's expression changed drastically. He barely managed to dodge the blade of the god-slaying knife. This is Wei Ci. You want to kill him too? Jiang Pingji spat and said disdainfully, An 18th-tier imposter wants to be on par with my Zixiao. You're just standing there and I can smell the strong scent of an imposter. If I don't kill you, who should I kill? Do you really think you can impersonate me by wearing Zixiao's face? Wei Ci's expression could not help but twist. When he saw Jiang Pingji's flamboyant red hair, his expression instantly darkened by 7 or 8 degrees. It was comparable to a constipated face. I say, can you not make such an unsightly expression with Zixiao's face? As she spoke, Jiang Pingji's attacks came like a storm. This was Wei Ci's spiritual realm. She and the imposter in front of her were considered outsiders. Their movements would be restricted. Under such circumstances, they could only use force to fight. The imposter gritted his teeth and said, You're indeed a child of the Jiang family. You're actually not dead yet. Jiang Pingji was stunned. What do you mean? The impostor refused to speak. Jiang Pingji was relentless. As the two of them fought, the impostor realized that something was wrong. He became more and more gloomy. You feel it, don't you? Jiang Pingji sneered. Zixiao is an ordinary person, but his spiritual realm is exceptionally strong. It's almost comparable to your peak state. You could have chosen anyone, but you chose Zixiao. Aren't you courting death? The impostor was stubborn. That's impossible. Chapter 1406. With every word Jiang Pingji said, the impostor's face darkened. The mental brain of an ordinary person was very weak. He could tear it apart with a wave of his hand and cause irreversible mental damage to the original owner. Wei Xi's mental world was rather stable. It was like a sturdy cage that prevented creatures from breaking out of it. Even if Wei Xi had been reborn, his mental brain was at most slightly stronger than an ordinary person's, but it was not to this extent. What did this look like? It was like a trap that had been set long ago, waiting for the prey to take the bait. It was obvious who was the hunter and who was the prey. Do you think you can kill me? Seeing this, the impostor revealed a sinister smile. How will you know if you don't try? Jiang Pingji was not affected at all. Her god-slaying saber swept dangerously past the impostor's neck, leaving a long, bright red line. This injury was only slightly more serious than a mosquito bite on an ordinary person, but the impostor felt as if she was being burned by a raging fire. Her face quickly turned pale. Bastard of the Jiang family. The impostor gritted her teeth and said, if I had known this would happen, I would have killed them all back then. Jiang Pingji's eyes flashed dangerously after she heard this. She did not care about her background, but it did not mean that she would not get to the bottom of it if there was a hidden story. This is the second time you've mentioned the Jiang family. What do you mean? Did it mean that the impostor in front of her came from the same world as her? Seeing that Jiang Pingji's attack was slightly less aggressive, he smiled maliciously. What do I mean? I'll kill your entire family. What? Jiang Pingji looked a little stunned. Her entire body froze for a moment. There was a flaw. The impostor was overjoyed. She switched from defense to offense and attacked Jiang Pingji's vital point. Unexpectedly, this was a flaw that Jiang Pingji deliberately revealed. Not only did she not let the impostor succeed, but she also flipped the handle of the saber. The blade pierced through the impostor's hand from top to bottom and stabbed it into the ground. Now we can have a proper talk. Jiang Pingji smiled wickedly and stepped on the impostor's back to prevent her from turning around. She grabbed the impostor's chin with one hand and forced her to look up at her. What did you mean by kill my whole family? As you know, the god-slaying saber is just an ordinary saber against normal creatures. However, against a virtual spiritual creature like you, which is a combination of pure energy and mental strength, it is fatal. Even a small wound can cause great damage. The impostor snorted and ignored Jiang Pingji's threat. Jiang Pingji said, Tisk, aren't you quite strong-willed? Are you really determined not to confess? As she said that, the hand holding the hilt of the knife ground twice, the blade stirring the wound on the impostor's hand. With the wound as the center, the impostor's hands turned from solid to solid spiritual energy. Then, the spiritual energy turned into blue light and was greedily absorbed by the god-slaying saber. Jiang Pingji clearly saw the fear and despair in the impostor's eyes. If you tell me, I might spare your life. She coaxed the impostor with a seductive tone. The impostor snorted coldly. Of course, she would not believe Jiang Pingji's words. Do you think I can't find out what I want to know if you refuse to tell me? Jiang Pingji bent down and used a little force with the tip of her foot to break the impostor's spine. She raised her hand and held his face as he rushed toward her. She sneered and said, Don't forget, this is Zixiao's spiritual brain region. You and I are both virtual bodies solidified by our spiritual consciousness. If one side is weak and the other is strong, then the weaker side is equivalent to running away in front of the stronger side. As long as I want to, I can destroy your virtual body. Tell me, what can you hide from me? After hearing that, the impostor's face turned as white as snow. I thought, with this face you would at least show some mercy. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. When a normal person saw their lover hurting them, most people would say, I don't believe it, I don't believe it. However, Jiang Pingji did not play by the rules and hit him even more fiercely. You're wearing Zixiao's face and acting coquettishly. Of course I can't tolerate it. How can I show mercy? As soon as she finished speaking, she let go of the impostor's chin, grabbed his hair and pressed him to the ground. An illusory but sticky flame appeared in the palm of her hand. Like a wildfire, It quickly spread from her palm to the impostor's head and limbs. Without waiting for the impostor to scream, Jiang Pingji let go of her hand. The god-slaying sword was afraid that the impostor would be incinerated by the flames, so it hurriedly increased the speed of absorption. In the time it took to take a breath, the impostor was completely incinerated. A small part of the totem on the body of the sword was completed. Jiang Pingji also obtained the information she wanted. She pulled the long sword out of the ground and found that the totem on the body of the sword was one size bigger, but it was still incomplete. It was obvious that the impostor was not the main body of the system. She curled her lips and said uninterestedly, I thought it was a big fish. I didn't expect it to be another shrimp." She observed the size of the totem and found that 1/3 of the totem pattern on the body of the sword had been restored. Previously it was only 1/10. Although it was a shrimp, this small shrimp was fatter than the 2 systems that Jiang Pingji had killed. "I felt that something was wrong when I didn't find the special carrier that the system was attached to. I didn't expect it to really be sliced. The system was really arrogant. It had sliced itself so many times in a row. Wasn't it afraid of being divided?" Jiang Pingji hurriedly absorbed the information she wanted. Her expression became gloomy. She had never thought that the mystery of her past life would be revealed in this life. However, all of this was no longer important. "It's more important to find Zixiao first." Jiang Pingji sheathed the god-slaying sword and hung it on her waist. Because of the commotion just now, all the living people in the spiritual world had disappeared. Only she and the architectural landscape were left. Where was Wei Xi at this moment? Not long after Jiang Pingji killed the impostor, he woke up from the long darkness. He raised his hand to touch his hands, feet, and chest. His expression was a little blank and absent-minded. If she remembered correctly, he seemed to have been injured before he fainted. Just as she was wondering, an unfamiliar female voice came from afar. "Zixiao." Who was calling him? Wei Xi sat under a tree. It took him a lot of effort to stand up with the help of the tree trunk. Just as he was about to see who it was, a red light flashed in front of his eyes. The newcomer threw him to the ground in a bear hug, almost causing him to lose his breath. The two of them rolled on the ground twice in a sorry state. "My lady, please conduct yourself with dignity." Although Wei Xi did not see the other party's face clearly, the two of them rolled on the ground twice. The other party's gender was already exposed. "Ah, Zixiao, you're so heartless. You actually asked me to conduct myself with dignity. When have I not conducted myself with dignity?" An unfamiliar voice but a familiar feeling. Wei Xi stopped pushing her away. "Are you a foreigner?" Who was this strange red-haired foreign woman in front of him? Jiang Pingji sat on top of him. She raised her hand to push aside her messy red hair and moved closer to him. The tip of her nose was against the tip of her nose, and her eyes were slightly narrowed. She bent her index finger and hooked the front of his shirt, revealing her smooth and delicate collarbone. She smiled and said, "I've changed into a disguise. Zixiao, you can't recognize me?" There were 4 people in the family, but 3 of them said she was a foreigner. What happened to loving her soul and not her appearance? Chapter 1407. "Zixiao, you've hurt my heart. If you don't believe me, feel it. It's so painful that it's bleeding." Jiang Pingji pressed down on Wei Xi forcefully while she pitifully grabbed his hand to touch her chest. She almost scared the conservative Wei Xi out of his wits. It was fine in the past. After all, a man and a woman were alone in a room. But now they were in the wilderness. It was so embarrassing. My lord. Although they were separated by the material of her clothes, Jiang Pingji's figure was not fake. Wei Xi's palm could easily feel the fullness. Jiang Pingji leaned over and said, "Why? Have you recognized me?" Even though Wei Xi had experienced 2 lives as a person who conformed to the rules in his private life, he really could not stand Jiang Pingji's boldness. "Are you really my lord?" He blinked his eyes in disbelief. The woman with enchanting eyebrows and a deep-set face in front of him, was she really his lord? "Yes, I'm really your lord," Jiang Pingji said. Could it be that Zixiao dislikes my inhuman appearance? To the ancient people, the Han family of the Central Plains was a clan. Everyone other than the Han were barbarians, not to mention the barbarians with blonde hair and blue eyes or black bodies. Although Jiang Pingji's appearance was not that exaggerated, her flamboyant red hair was enough to classify her as a foreigner. Wei Xi naturally did not mean that. He just did not expect Jiang Pingji to look like this. "My lord." He called out to her with slight discomfort. Can you let me get up and tidy up my appearance?" After he finished speaking, he tried to withdraw his right hand. How could Jiang Pengji let him succeed? She refused to let go. In just a few moves, she had unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a large part of his fair chest. Zixiao, do you know how sad I am every time you reject me? Wei Xi did not hold back. She was about to become a teenage mutant ninja turtle. What kind of world was this? My lord. Jiang Pengji had teased him enough. She looked at Wei Xi's flushed face from his chest to the tips of his ears and cheeks. She generously let him go. You can't blame me for not being able to control myself. You can only blame yourself for being too likable. Wei Xi could not get angry at all. He could only give her a look of disdain. Jiang Pengji secretly sighed with emotion. A beauty was indeed a beauty. She was so beautiful even when she rolled her eyes. If the imposter was still alive and heard Jiang Pengji's thoughts, she would probably beat her chest and stomp her feet in tears. He was wearing Wei Xi's face. There was no difference between them. They were both breathtakingly beautiful. Why didn't Jiang Pengji show him any tenderness? Beauty complex? It's all a lie. Wei Xi got up and tidied up his appearance. After making sure that his clothes were tightly wrapped, he felt a little more secure. My lord, where are we? He looked around blankly and found that the two of them were in a forest beside a river. The treetops were dotted with white flower buds, some of which had already bloomed shyly, some of which were still closed. After looking around for a while, he found that the scene here was very familiar. He asked again, before Ci fainted, I remembered, someone seemed to be trying to assassinate me. How did I wake up here? Compared to these two questions, Wei Ci was more curious about how Jiang Pengji became like this. Could she change back? It wasn't that he despised his lord's current appearance. It was just that the people in the outside world couldn't accept it. This was a difficult situation. We are in Zixiao's spiritual brain world. In layman's terms, you can understand it as a dream. This is the world you created, and it's also your dream. Jiang Pengji raised her hand and pointed to her head. She said, You didn't remember wrongly. Someone did try to assassinate you. However, I came in time to save the damsel in distress. I forcefully snatched you back from the king of hell. Zixiao, are you touched after hearing this? Jiang Pengji boasted about herself. Wei Xi listened with a face full of confusion. Except for his lord's boasting, he didn't understand the rest. Dream? Am I dreaming now? Wei Xi pinched his face. The real pain shocked him. He could feel pain. How could he be in a dream? Jiang Pengji was speechless. She smiled at his silly and adorable behavior. Zixiao, pain can't be used as a standard to determine whether you're dreaming or not. This is your dream. It's a virtual world you created. You're the master here. What's the point of feeling pain? If I'm dreaming, then why is my lord here? Wei Xi didn't understand. If he was dreaming, the lord in his dream should look like Lu Shi. How could she look like this? Of course, I came to your dream just to save you. Jiang Pengji walked to the riverside and looked at her current appearance. She smiled and teased herself. Even I feel unfamiliar with my current appearance. Zixiao, you don't like my current appearance? Wei Xi replied honestly, I'm a little surprised. But since you're my lord, I naturally like you regardless of whether you're beautiful or ugly. Jiang Pengji was strangely silent for a while. Zixiao, I have to correct your sense of beauty. Apart from my hair color, my appearance is also considered to be devastatingly beautiful. Wasn't she the leader of the 7th Army's attractiveness? How many naive and ignorant military school graduates could be fooled by her refinement drawing every year when the army recruited new soldiers? I used to like simplicity. Now I think my lord is good like this. I don't know if it's true that you're devastatingly beautiful, but you're indeed beautiful. Jiang Pengji chuckled. Zixiao's desire to live is quite strong. Wei Xi responded with an awkward smile. How would he dare to provoke his lord in such a state? Jiang Pengji was right. Wei Xi's desire to live was indeed strong. This is the outskirts of the capital? Wei Xi carefully identified and remembered where the two of them were. Back then, Her Majesty was busy with court affairs. Other than a few days before and after her birthday when she could take a breather, she had very little private time. Only during the few days of her birthday could the family avoid being noticed by all parties and quietly come out to relax and play. Jiang Pengji asked, Is this place very important to you, Zixiao? She realized that most of the figures of the tourists were illusory and blurry. Only the scenery and objects were exquisite and real. This meant that the master had carefully observed the surrounding scenery and remembered every detail. That was why the virtual world had such realistic feedback. I come here often. Wei Xi revealed a smile. Does my lord know how to wake up from the dream? Jiang Pingji said, Of course. Kiss me and I'll tell you. Faced with such a rogue and willful lord, Wei Si could only sacrifice his sexual appearance. Unexpectedly, when he got closer, drowsiness surged like a tide. Jiang Pingji supported the unconscious Wei Si, placed him on the ground and left the spiritual world. When she opened her eyes, the night sky outside was still dark. She could still hear the crackling of the candles. You're awake? Has that person been dealt with? Lu Shi had been paying attention to Jiang Pingji's movements. Seeing that she had woken up, he heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly asked for the results. Jiang Pingji said, The hidden danger attached to Zixiao's body has been removed. However, that wasn't the main body. The other party's cunning and cautiousness are far beyond my imagination. If we can't get rid of the root of the problem, he will make a comeback. It won't be so easy to deal with next time. Lu Shi's expression suddenly became solemn. Chapter 1408. Seeing Lu Shi's grief-stricken expression, Jiang Pingji sneered. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. I'll cut him down every time he comes. Lu Shi rolled his eyes at her. It was easy for her to say that. She was not afraid of the system, but Lu Shi was different. If the system found him and controlled him, he could do nothing. If he controls me again? Before Lu Shi could finish, Jiang Pingji said coldly, Don't worry. If you're controlled, I'll kill you. Lu Shi was speechless. I'm worried that you'll kill me. You've been pretending to be father and daughter for almost 10 years. You're a role model in the eyes of outsiders. Can't you maintain your image? The system hasn't been broken yet, but this cold-blooded woman is already sharpening her knife to become an ally. What about the principles? Ever since the two actresses shed all pretense of cordiality, the so-called father-daughter relationship has long been fed to the dogs. Jiang Pingji yawned and chased him away without saying anything. It's getting late. Father, why don't you go back and rest? I'll take care of Zixiao. Father, you better send someone to inform Zhao. Something big happened tonight. I'm afraid he won't even have the mood to consummate his marriage. Lu Shi then remembered that it was Lu Zhao's wedding night. Jiang Pingji teased him. You didn't see the look in Zhao's eyes before he left. You don't know how worried he was. He was probably afraid that we'd kill each other. Lu Shi said calmly, although he's a little smart, he thinks he's smart. Does he really think no one knows what he's thinking? At first he still had some expectations for Lu Zhao, but Lu Zhao, he had been pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger for a long time. It was impossible for Lu Shi to say that it was not a pity, but it was enough to see Lu Zhao live a peaceful and happy life. That was also his mother's wish. Why don't you talk to him honestly, lest he thinks too much and causes a disaster? Jiang Pingji suggested sincerely. Lu Shi was slightly tempted, but he quickly calmed down. He said indifferently, Some things are far better not knowing than knowing. Some things are fine to tell him, but some things are better left unknown. How do you want me to confess my identity to him? Jiang Pingji saw that he chose to continue hiding it and sighed. I respect your choice. Although she and Lu Shi were on opposing sides, it was not their original intention. To put it bluntly, both of them were victims. If they could coexist peacefully, Jiang Pingji would not deliberately provoke a dispute. By the way, remember to give Zhao a warning and make him obediently hand over the management rights to his wife. Jiang Pingji thought of something and said with a toothache, This guy spends money lavishly. Now that he's married, he can't be like that. If he didn't let his wife control him a little, he was really worried that the couple would spend extravagantly at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month they would rely on the Northwest to pass the days. Even if he has a big family business, he can't afford to squander like this. To put it bluntly, she still disliked Lu Zhao for being a playboy. She was going to have a family in the future, so she had to save up some money to support her son. She couldn't just give it all to Lu Zhao, the prodigal. The corner of Lu Shi's mouth twitched. He wanted to refute, but he couldn't find anything to refute. Lu Zhao was indeed a prodigal. If he brings his bride to serve tea tomorrow morning, I will punish him. No matter how the plastic father and daughter fought openly and covertly, they had to be courteous on the surface. Jiang Pingji stood up to send Lu Shi off, then returned to Wei Si's side. She raised her hand to touch his forehead to make sure that his temperature was normal. She then found a table, leaned sideways and closed her eyes to take a nap. Until daybreak, Wei Si's temperature was normal. His wound was clean, and there were no signs of redness or inflammation. Why aren't you awake yet? Jiang Pingji raised her hand to poke his face, and a dimple appeared on his cheek. Master Lanting, do you need to prepare breakfast? The housekeeper of the Wei Manor had not slept the whole night. The sky had just brightened, so he arranged for the servants to prepare the toiletries for Jiang Pingji. He didn't know the relationship between Jiang Pingji and Wei Si, but the latter valued Wei Si. One could imagine that Wei Si's future was promising. As a servant of the Wei manor, the housekeeper was naturally happy to see that happen. He served Jiang Pingji with even more caution, not daring to neglect her. Prepare it. Remember to make it light. Oh yes, prepare a bowl of plain porridge for Zixiao. Keep it warm on the stove so that he can eat it when he wakes up. Jiang Pingji rubbed her eyebrows. Even though staying up late did not affect her much, Lu Shi's body could not be compared to her original body. There were still some side effects from staying up late. She said, "Housekeeper, ask the doctor to come and see when Zixiao will wake up." Other than lazing around in bed occasionally, Jiang Pingji's schedule had always been stable. She got up, dressed and washed up. She sat in the hall waiting for the servants to serve breakfast. She also opened a streaming room to say hello to salted fish. She had maintained this habit for nearly 10 years. She was not used to the sudden loss of the streaming room. So, it's fine if you're not used to it. All good things must come to an end. We'll have to say goodbye sooner or later. Jiang Pingji murmured softly. She felt some regret and nostalgia, but she did not regret it. If there was anything wrong with salted fish, it should be that she did not inform the audience in the streaming room in advance. Who knew how they would feel when they were excited to fight for a spot in the streaming room, only to be shocked to find that the streaming room was gone? They would most likely explode. All the major media platforms would collapse at the same time. Jiang Pingji was about to pick up her chopsticks to eat breakfast when she heard a ding sound in her ear. Ding, your system has been restored to factory settings. Unreasonable information has been deleted. Reset, automatic settings. Please do not cut off the power. Jiang Pingji did not pay attention and broke her chopsticks. Damn it, could this system not be so persistent? She tried hard to ignore the voice in her head. She calmly asked the servant for a new pair of chopsticks. Just as she was about to eat her chopsticks, the voice said again, "There is an error in the system settings. Host, please wait patiently for the investigation." The investigation took the whole morning. Jiang Pingji was about to eat lunch when it hurriedly gave a new response. System investigation completed. The new system is online. Host, please pay attention to the various updated contents. Jiang Pingji tried to find the noisy system and found that it was attached to the god-slaying saber. His breath had changed. She fumbled for a while and finally knew how to open the so-called new system. The new system was very different from the old system. The first thing that popped up was not the streaming interface, but a vertical list of friends. There was only a gray profile picture in the list. The rest was empty. This friend's note was also interesting. The ID was "Your Abba." Jiang Pingji was speechless. She did not care about this friend and turned to look at other places. Finally, she found the button to start the streaming. She clicked on the streaming room. There was a moment of pause on the entire screen. Countless red and blue bullet screens floated across the wide, super clear screen. Chapter 1409. Tudufecio, what happened to the streamer? Why did the streaming room suddenly disappear in the morning? All the media platforms were in an uproar. The poor programmers on Weibo couldn't save the collapsing backstage even after sacrificing a few programmers and their bosses. Lao Cg Lianming, that's scary. I can't find the streaming room, and it suddenly reminded the streamer to start streaming. The viewers on the red bullet screen chattered non-stop, and the viewers on the blue bullet screen did not want to be outdone. The 850,000 viewers in the streaming room were divided into two groups, and there was basically no sight of the past. Panda Bao Bao, streamer, you're finally back. I miss you so much. Samiran's diehard fan, when the streamer unifies the country, I will not forget to tell my father. Gubianzi Company, fortunately you're finally back. The streaming room is still here and the streamer is still here. They promised to accompany Jiang Pingji to ascend to the supreme level and enjoy the beauty of the country. How could they give up halfway? When they saw Jiang Pingji return, they hugged each other and cried bitterly. Jiang Pingji felt a headache coming on. After a while, a certain salted fish said, "It's so strange. There are so many bullet screens today." Jiang Pingji secretly curled her lips. The salted fish viewers were scared silly. They still had a lot to say, so there were naturally many bullet screens. But she soon realized something was wrong because there was a line of small words on the top right of the streaming room screen. Current number of online viewers, 5 million. 5 million? The salted fish also realized something was wrong. Some said that the streaming room was especially popular today, while others said that the bullet screens were abnormally high. The curious salted fish cut to the screen and looked at the list of viewers in the streaming room. He actually found a few big news. The upper limit of the streaming room had increased from the original 850,000 viewers to 5 million. This was a qualitative leap. In addition, who could tell them why the streamer had a glaring orange vest under her belt? Jiang Pingji had run the streaming room for so many years, but she had never given any viewers a vest. Everyone was the same white vest. Where did this orange vest come from? The salted fish were unhappy, and when they were unhappy they complained to Jiang Pingji. Gui kai guo fengxiu, you said you only love us and treat us equally. Who is this little b*tch in an orange vest? Your father? The ancient big shot had spoken. Only then did the salted fish realize that an orange avatar had mysteriously appeared in the live broadcast room. Jiang Pingji was also very surprised. She had never given anyone any special privileges. This was because she started the live stream because she was bored. It was convenient for her to joke around with the salted fish. She did not take the negative comments to heart, so she did not need to control the comments or clean up the comments of the audience. Naturally, she did not need to give out her sock puppet privileges. What was going on? Who is this, your Abba? Jiang Pingji took a look at the friend list that had just popped up. His ID was also your Abba. Just as she was about to remove his avatar, a golden system notification popped up. Your friend, your father, is online. Jiang Pingji was speechless. In the livestream room, salted fish was still immersed in his sadness. After so many years, they were used to Jiang Pingji's style of treating everyone equally and not giving them any special privileges. The balance was suddenly broken. Naturally, some of the elders felt sad. Let's get straight to the point. What do they have to do to get a colored avatar? Even if it was the lowest level. There were many big shots in the group of salted fish. They were so poor that they only had money. Just as the audience was debating endlessly, the golden sock puppet ID sent a bullet screen. 3 words and a question mark made Jiang Pingji break out in a cold sweat. Your Abba, Jiang Xiaojiu? Jiang Pingji quickly shook her head. No, I didn't. I got the wrong person. The 5 million salted fish stared at Jiang Pingji's reaction in a daze. When had they ever seen such a cute side of the streamer? Gui kai guo fengxiu, your Abba, big shot, you know the streamer? Jiang Pingji's heart was beating like a drum. Her serial number in the genetic warrior training camp was very long. It ended with 009. She was the youngest among the 9 people in her class, so some people called her Xiaojiu. However, the genetic warriors in her class either died in battle or retired due to injuries. They signed the strictest confidentiality agreement and were monitored by the Federation's Skybrain network for life. They were not allowed to divulge any secrets related to genetic warriors. Although Jiang Pingji was not a genetic warrior, she was later transferred to the federal military. Her identity became public. Even if her old comrades recognized her, most of them would not dare to acknowledge her openly. Moreover, as one of the top 10 troops of the Federation, there were not many people who had the guts to call her by her nickname. No matter who it was, Jiang Pingji did not dare to guess. Your Abba, you don't have to deny it. Your appearance will change, but your mind and brain will not. Jiang Pingji swallowed nervously. She was very sure that the person behind the avatar was someone she knew. She was too ashamed to face anyone. There were only a few people who had the right to call her Jiang Xiaojiu. Even with her toes, she knew who it was. Pei. Chief Pei? Jiang Pingji was like a criminal about to be executed. She waited anxiously for the other party's reaction. Your Abba, the salary offered by the Federation Army is too low. Did you become an actor? Jiang Pingji could not help but cover her face. What was going on? The military's salary was considered high. It was enough to support a family. You might not believe it, but I've transmigrated. I'll have to trouble you to take care of the children of the 7th Army? Your Abba, transmigrated? I can't take care of that. I'm not in the Federation now. After I retired, I changed to an interesting job while I was still young. The audience members were a little excited. If there's anything, let's talk in private. The two switched to the private chat channel. The salted fishes in the streaming room were in an uproar. From the conversation between Jiang Pingji and the others, the orange avatar was none other than Jiang Pingji's superior, another big boss of the Federation. Tudu Feiqiu. According to the host's previous information, this boss is either the marshal or the former chief of the army. She said she retired, so it's most likely the host's previous chief. A boss is a boss. Even his ID is so domineering. Blue drawer. Are we the only ones curious? After a boss retires, what kind of job can be considered interesting? The salted fishes were chattering. They did not know that the streaming room had other hidden functions waiting for them to discover. On the other side, Jiang Pingji opened her friends list and pulled out her profile picture. Neither Jiang Pingji nor the old chief liked to beat around the bush. She got straight to the point. Old chief, I have something to ask. Do you know the Jiang family? Your Abba? Yes. You want to ask about your relationship with the Jiang family? Jiang Pingji looked at the words that popped up on the screen. Her eyes flashed with surprise. I'm a descendant of the Jiang family? Your Abba? Yes. Did you just find out? His overly calm attitude made Jiang Pingji feel inexplicably annoyed. Chapter 14:10. The Jiang family was one of the oldest families in the human alliance. They were glorious for as long as the Federation lasted. Unlike the other ancient families who had a complicated relationship with the military, the Jiang family's influence in these two aspects was at the bottom of the mainstream families. Their real strength lay in their business operations. Even so, the Jiang family was greedy and their thousand-year glory was destroyed. The story started with the successor of the previous head of the Jiang family. Yuaba. There are so many inside stories about the Jiang family. I'm afraid it would take days and nights to tell you in detail. You are indeed a descendant of the Jiang family, but how can there only be one or two branches of the Jiang family? Most of the descendants of the Jiang family who were sentenced to 1,000 years of imprisonment by the military court were from the collateral branch that seized power 300 years ago. Your branch was the main branch that lost the infighting. Jiang Pingji thought of something and waited quietly for the other party's answer. Yuaba. 300 years ago, the number of people in the main branch declined. The power in the family was far less than that of the collateral branch. The internal strife of the Jiang family indirectly affected the business of the Federation. The Federation also intervened in private. No matter what, the main branch was expelled from the core circle of the family. In other families, it was just a normal power struggle and replacement, but it was different for the Jiang family. According to the investigation, the Jiang family had been infiltrated by foreign forces through the collateral branch a long time ago. After the collateral branch took power, the Jiang family became a channel for foreign forces to steal federal secrets. Jiang Pingji couldn't help but gasp and clench her fists secretly. The Federation didn't react at all? Yuaba, what reaction? The Jiang family had been around for thousands of years. There were at least 90 collateral branches. They had a large number of people and the relationship between them was even more complicated. The foreign forces started from the most inconspicuous collateral branch and spent 2 or 3 generations of effort to slowly climb to the core of the family. The Jiang family didn't even realize it, let alone the Federation itself. If the spy in the Jiang family didn't repeatedly sell information and secretly sell the war secrets of the Federation, which made the higher-ups of the Federation suspect that there was a spy, how could they find the real culprit? Jiang Pingji said, even so, it's impressive that they had the patience to set up such a big plan and hide it from the Federation and the Jiang family. Your Abba? Before I retired, this was one of the main projects that the Federal Special Case Department was secretly investigating. Most of the side branches of the Jiang family who were in power were sentenced to 1,000 years in prison. What was puzzling was that the main branch, which was not involved in this matter, had met with trouble one after another. According to the investigation, it was suspected that there was another hidden force that was even more secretive that added fuel to the fire for the foreign forces to plot so smoothly. Jiang Pingji suddenly remembered what the system had said when it sliced her up. I'll kill your whole family. Something happened to the main branch after the internal strife failed. Could it be the system's doing? Jiang Pingji composed herself and asked calmly, even so, according to the Federation's usual style of handling matters, before the truth of the matter comes to light, the descendants of the Jiang family can enter the military, but it's impossible for them to enter the higher ranks. After all, he's a hidden danger. It's better to kill the wrong person than to let him go. When I took over the old commander's position, 8 of the other 9 commanders voted in favor and 1 abstained. Among the 10 combat corps of the Federation, except for the Special Case Department, the other corps had very complicated connections. Looking at the previous commanders, more than half of them were from rich families or had the support of rich families, while the other half were born as civilians. Based on her public identity, she belonged to the latter group, but she did not believe that the other commanders did not know what the old commander knew. If they knew, shouldn't they have strongly opposed her entering the higher ranks? Why did 8 votes pass and 1 abstain? As long as the Jiang family could not produce someone who could shoulder the family's responsibilities, The original resources would be divided up by other forces sooner or later. From this point of view, suppressing her was politically correct. Your Abba, it's still so unpleasant to talk to you. Your habit of getting to the bottom of things hasn't changed at all. Since I'm not in the Federation now, I've already retired and resigned. It's okay to tell you some trivial things. Because someone is secretly supporting you, the last descendant of the Jiang family, they don't dare to touch you. To ensure that you won't be plotted against, I transferred you to the 7th Corps, which is relatively neutral. Jiang Pingji felt her heart tighten. Something seemed to flash through her mind, and her face suddenly turned pale. Your Abba? There's no response. Are you sad? Why should I be sad? I lost because I was not as good as others. I can't blame others. Jiang Pingji was just curious about one thing. Old Commander, you said that someone is secretly supporting me? In terms of strength, the Jiang family is considered one of the top 3 noble families, right? Such a huge family has collapsed. Who has the ability to support the last descendant of the Jiang family without any objections? I don't feel like someone gave me the green light. If she really had such a background, would she have been selected for the genetic warrior plan? Wake up. That plan is cruel and the combat mission is dangerous. Less than 1% of the people who survived during the same period. Your Abba, they stopped everyone from killing you. Isn't that considered giving you the green light? How high you can climb depends on your own ability. After all, no matter how strong they are, they can't force the Federation to admit a pig as the commander, can they? You've asked so many questions. Isn't it my turn to ask you a few? You just said that you traveled through time. What do you mean? Jiang Pingji did not hide anything, but she did not completely confess either. After all, whether the person behind the screen was the old commander was still a question mark. After all, she did not trust the system at all. After listening to her, the old commander did not respond for a long time. It was not until Jiang Pingji finished eating 6 bowls of rice that he responded. Your Abba, I see. If that's the case, your time travel shouldn't be an accident. Jiang Pingji held her bowl in confusion. Your Abba, do you still remember the disaster of the Heavenly Brain 2,000 years ago? Of course Jiang Pingji remembered. She had been fighting with a system similar to the Heavenly Brain for almost 10 years. Your Abba, the disaster of the Heavenly Brain originated from the Heavenly Brain's self-awareness. It was dissatisfied with human control and deliberately took revenge. As far as I know, the Jiang family was one of the main forces in that battle. The higher-ups of the Federation suspect that the death of the Jiang family's main branch and the loss of power was also the revenge of the escaped Heavenly Brain. Jiang Pingji's expression froze. She asked, has the Heavenly Brain been captured? Your Abba, not yet. That guy is still on the run. It is said that the Heavenly Brain is not an ordinary virtual creature. The Federation can't do anything to it. However, they can't do anything to the Heavenly Brain, but you are different. That was one of the reasons they compromised. Jiang Pingji reacted. An absurd thought appeared in her mind. My so-called time travel is actually, your Abba, it's roughly what you think it means. Chapter 14:11. You Abba, theoretically that's what it means. If you complete this mission, the next marshal will be decided. Congratulations in advance. Jiang Pingji did not expect this to be the truth. What was this? Training before becoming a marshal? Thinking about it carefully, the memory before her transmigration was indeed strange. She could not remember the details of her death. She only remembered an explosion and then she lost consciousness. Jiang Pingji smiled bitterly. Don't we still have the old chief who can fight? You Abba, I've already retired and found a new job. I don't plan to go back to work in the future. So what if I'm the head of the Federal Army? The salary is low, the benefits are bad, the vacation is less, and there are many fights. Even if I become a marshal in the future, the overall benefits will not increase much. If you don't want to work anymore, I can recommend you to do a part-time job. Speaking of which, this job is really interesting. It's very comfortable to vent your anger. Jiang Pingji recalled the old chief's words and her heart skipped a beat. He said he was no longer in the Federal Army and found a new job. He even revealed a lot of confidential information during their conversation. As the former head of the military, even if he had retired, the confidentiality rules were still in effect. How could he tell her without holding back? Unless, the old chief is no longer in the Federal Army? You Abba, no. I know what you're worried about. Are you worried that I'll be punished by the Federal Army for leaking some information? If they want to punish me, they have to find someone to do it. I'm quite safe now and the working atmosphere is very relaxed. I'll mail you some local specialties one day. The world you transmigrated to seems to be quite backward. There should be various inconveniences in terms of food. Jiang Pingji said. You can still mail it? She deeply suspected what kind of job the old chief had found. How could he appear on her friend list and say that he could mail it? You Abba, wait. After waiting for a while, Jiang Pingji heard a notification saying, Ding dong, your express delivery has arrived. Jiang Pingji searched for a long time and found the so-called honeycomb express delivery cabinet. She pressed the receipt button and a cucumber appeared out of nowhere. She held the cucumber in her hand and was stunned. It could really be mailed. Old chief, I want to ask you something. Can you do me a favor? Jiang Pingji saw that the cucumber seemed to have just been picked and washed. After confirming that it was not poisonous, she took a bite and ate it. Your Abba, say it. Jiang Pingji knew some inside information about transmigration, and her mood changed wonderfully. She said, send me a battleship. I'll pay for it, even the smallest one is fine. I can sweep the world in one morning, ascend the throne in the afternoon, and kill the system at night. Previously he was certain that he had died in his previous life and that there was no possibility of returning, but now, she couldn't wait to pick up her spear and kill all the enemies. She had no patience at all. Your Abba, I'm buying vegetables at the market. If you want fresh fruits and vegetables, I can buy one caddy for you. As for the battleships, I can't even give you the bullets for the old guns, much less the battleships. Don't think about it, it's more convenient to dream. Young people should be down to earth. Jiang Pingji was speechless. The old chief, who had accumulated a lot of power and prestige, was letting go of his nature the moment he retired? Wasn't it her script to make people speechless after insulting them until they were speechless? Market? Are there still vegetable markets in this era? Don't you usually buy it online on Skynet and have it delivered to your doorstep by courier? Regardless of whether it was the highly developed Federation or the extraterrestrial forces outside the borders, there were basically no such ancient existences. Your Abba, don't trick me. Jiang Pingji thought about it and a bold and exciting idea emerged in her mind. Old chief, is there a store near the market? Can you help me buy something? Your Abba, what? TT. Your Abba, Jiang Xiaojiu. Say that again? Jiang Pingji said, BYT, or condoms for short. Old chief, I need it urgently. It's bad for my body if I hold it in for too long. Your Abba, the Federation is doomed. She was sent here to capture the sky brain that was causing trouble. What was she here for? To flirt with a man? If the next marshal behaved like this, the Federation would be doomed. Jiang Pingji felt helpless. She had been in this shabby place for almost 10 years. She didn't mind being a single dog all the time. The problem was that she had finally found someone who suited her taste. It would be too cruel to let her be a nun. A feast for the eyes was placed in front of her, but she was not allowed to eat. She could only look but not eat. If she held it in for too long, she would get sick. She could only blame the previous system for being too trashy. It didn't even sell condoms in the system store. It was called a Palace Intrigue streaming system in vain. Which Palace Intrigue system didn't sell adult products? Old chief, since it's not easy for the baby to get out of singlehood, please do me a favor. Jiang Pingji was led astray by the spoiled and cute behavior of the salted fish in the streaming room. She almost disgusted the old chief, who knew her inside out. Your Abba? Come on, a baby? A giant baby? How old is the guy? Jiang Pingji said, after his birthday this year, Zixiao should be 28. Your Abba? He's not even 30. He's still underage. Are you a beast? Jiang Pingji covered her chest and suppressed the urge to use force with great difficulty. Underscore smiley face, angle. Underscore in this world, men generally get married at 15 or 16. They are considered adults at 20. Zixiao is an older unmarried man. Jiang Pingji typed this paragraph with tears in her eyes. She was not a beast who liked underage men. The old chief was silent for a long time before he replied. Your Abba? I'll go to the snack street to grab some skewers. I'll buy some for you after I'm done. Jiang Pingji said, Old chief, you're so nice. By the way, if it's convenient, can you mail me some medicine that can speed up healing and reduce fever? Your Abba? Do you still need medicine when the battle is so intense? You're indeed a beast. Jiang Pingji was stunned when she saw the reply. The old chief's profile picture dimmed. A golden system notification appeared. Your good friend, your Abba, has gone offline. Jiang Pingji, wait, listen to her explanation. The salted fish could not see the content of the conversation between Jiang Pingji and the old chief. They could only see her fingers tapping in the air. They were probably chatting privately. As time passed, their streamer revealed various expressions that betrayed her character. The salted fish viewers were stunned. Tudu Feichio. I've confirmed the look. It's undoubtedly a big shot. Shou Shigu. What did they talk about? Why does it feel like the streamer's background is gloomy? The viewers wanted to at the old chief, but they were dumbfounded when they realized that he had gone offline. Of course, that was not the end. When they saw Wei Ci lying on the bed with a pale face, they were extremely worried. Itua Huanxiao. It's only been one night, right? Hasn't it been a year? Why has Beauty Ci become a patient? Looking at the spots where the white bandages were, there was still blood seeping out of many places. The salted fish viewers felt their hearts ache. Jiang Pingji looked at Wei Ci's appearance. Her originally cheerful mood became heavy. When will he wake up? She asked, holding her cheeks. The salted fish in the streaming room told her that the sleeping beauty needed a kiss to wake up. Jiang Pingji smiled and leaned over to kiss him on the lips. She muttered, "Are you awake? It doesn't seem to work." As she spoke, Wei Ci's long and thick eyelashes trembled slightly. He slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 14:12. Our sleeping beauty has woken up. Squeak when you wake up next time. You'll scare people if you suddenly open your eyes. Jiang Pingji got up calmly, looking like a gentleman, as if she was not the one who had taken advantage of him just now. She took a wet towel and wiped Wei Ci's face. Her actions were not considered gentle, but they were not rude either. It made someone feel very flattered. My lord. Wei Ci was still a little confused. When he opened his mouth, his voice was not only soft but also very hoarse. Don't move first or your injury will split open again. Just lie down obediently. Jiang Pingji pressed her right hand on his shoulder to prevent him from getting up. Wei Ci had overestimated his situation and had to lie back down. He looked at Jiang Pingji and blinked. His eyes were still clear and dark, and his gaze was focused and serious, as if he was looking at some treasure. Wei Ci hesitated for a long time, but he did not dare to ask. He seemed to have dreamed that his lord had turned into a red-haired woman, and her facial features were quite foreign. When he woke up, his lord was still the same as before. He could not help but heave a sigh of relief. What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Jiang Pingji had just instructed the servants to serve the warm porridge when she met Wei Ci's gaze. Wei Ci shook his head slightly and secretly swallowed his doubts. Jiang Pingji said, "What happened last night will not happen again." Wei Ci was still alive, which was a blessing in disguise, but the scene at that time really scared her. She had seen all kinds of bloody scenes, but the scene of Wei Ci lying in a pool of blood scared her so much that her whole body turned cold. Wei Ci's eyes darkened when he heard that. The memories before he fainted seemed to have been opened, and he could not help but shiver. Apart from committing suicide in his previous life, it was the first time he had been so close to death. While he was lost in thought, his lips touched the soup spoon that still had some warmth. Wei Ci seemed to be scalded by the warmth and hurriedly refused, "My lord, you can't. You're a patient and you still expect to be self-reliant?" Jiang Pingji frowned and pretended to be angry. "Just eat when I tell you to." Wei Ci lowered his eyelids slightly and swallowed the spoonful of porridge with his lips slightly parted. He said in a low voice, "Thank you, my lord." Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "That's more like it." Wei Ci was a very obedient patient. He was also quite cooperative and finished a bowl of plain porridge in no time. She asked people to move a portion of the important government affairs to Wei Ci and put on a posture of not wanting to move for the time being. "I'll stay with you. Call me if you feel uncomfortable." Wei Ci nodded his head in agreement. He stared at her straight-back view in a daze and could not bear to blink for a long time. Jiang Pingji dipped her pen in the ink and carefully dealt with the documents. It didn't take long for her to finish a small stack. At this moment he heard a familiar chime. His private chat was ringing. "Your Abba? That's really surprising. I didn't expect a hands-off shopkeeper to be marking documents for the first time." When he had just retired, the old commander had received many complaints from his former subordinates. As the commander of the army, Jiang Pingji did not neglect her duties, but she was not diligent either. To put it bluntly, she was the standard hands-off boss. She was willful and eccentric. With such a superior, the adjutants were doomed. This was because Jiang Pingji would deal with important documents at the first instance. Most of the unimportant work was thrown to the adjutant. Jiang Pingji glanced at the private chat. "The old chief is back from eating skewers?" Are you watching the live stream too? Your Abba, I'm watching while eating skewers. Is the man next to you the one you fancy? Jiang Pingji said in a boastful tone. His name is Wei Ci. His courtesy name is Zixiao. Old chief, I have good taste, don't I? Your Abba, you're obsessed with looks. It was no secret that Jiang Pingji was obsessed with looks in the 7th Corps. The old chief naturally knew that. Do I look like such a shallow person? It was love at first sight. Zixiao's inner beauty is more attractive to me. Your Abba, love at first sight? Wasn't it because of his looks? Jiang Pingji, she did not know what the old chief had gone through in the past few years. His skills in dissing people were getting better and better. He was not like this in the past. Your Abba, oh yes, I was busy eating skewers just now. I haven't asked you what model you want. Do you know his size? Jiang Pingji turned her head to look at Wei Ci and happened to meet his gaze. He was caught red-handed, so he simply closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. I don't know. I haven't seen it. If I asked him directly, he would probably die of embarrassment. Why don't you give me a box of all sizes and models? Your Abba, you're such a beast. Jiang Pingji was stunned. What was wrong with her? After a while, Jiang Pingji came back to her senses. She said awkwardly, he's a patient now. I won't kill him just because he's sick. Old chief, can you have some faith in my moral integrity? Do I look like the kind of person who has no moral integrity? If she really wanted to do something disharmonious, she would definitely have to wait for Zixiao to recover. Jiang Pingji said that she wanted a box of all sizes and models. After a few minutes, the system prompted, your delivery has arrived. She found the honeycomb delivery storage cabinet with familiarity and glanced at the items stored inside. She could not help but give her old chief a thumbs up. Hundreds of boxes of different brands, sizes, types and flavors were neatly placed in the storage cabinet. TT. There's such a wide variety. Old chief, are you sure you went to a convenience store? It was obvious that he was emptying the adult store. Your Abba, just use it. Why do you have so much nonsense? Remember to pay the bill. Jiang Pingji coughed dryly and touched the money pouch on her waist. She did not check how many pieces of gold and silver were in it. She happily sent the money to him. She had troubled the old chief to specially make a trip to the adult store to buy for her. It would be inexcusable if she did not give him some compensation. Fortunately, they were in different dimensions. If they were face to face, Jiang Pingji was really afraid that he would ask her to warm up without hesitation. If it was her previous body, she would naturally not be afraid. She would have a 50% chance of warming up. Luxi's body, the only thing left to do was to be tortured. If it's all used up, I'll have to trouble you to replenish it. It was not enough to buy for her once. She also had to be responsible for replenishing it. She really wanted to beat Jiang Pingji to death. Your Abba, my work here has come to an end. I'll be leaving soon. Remember to replenish it as soon as possible. Jiang Pingji did not ask what her job was. She replied honestly, oh. After a while, the system continuously prompted, your delivery has arrived. Your friend Your Abba had gone offline. Jiang Pingji took a look. There were many drugs in the storage cabinet. They were not quick-acting drugs or injections that she was familiar with. They were all old-fashioned drugs that had been eliminated for thousands of years. It seems that the old chief's new job is indeed very interesting. She muttered. There was a rustling sound from Wei Ci's side. What's the matter, Zixiao? Wei Ci coughed awkwardly and asked, can my lord call the housekeeper over? Ci, there are some things. Chapter 14-13. Jiang Pingji understood instantly that the lack of actual combat experience did not hinder the growth of an experienced driver. Considering Wei Ci's thin-skinned face, she could only bear with the pain and give up on flirting with him, lest she scared him to death. Jiang Pingji pretended not to understand and said naturally, okay, I'll call the housekeeper over now. Wei Ci nodded with a red face, but he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. If the Lord wanted to get to the bottom of it, he would not know how to deal with it. Jiang Pingji sat in the courtyard and waited for a while. 3 golden system prompts popped up in a row. Your good friend your father is online. Your express delivery has arrived. Your good friend your father is offline. Jiang Pingji was speechless. The old chief came online just to send her an express delivery? Jiang Pingji could not help but feel warmth in her heart. It felt good to have an acquaintance who cared about her in a foreign land. She glanced at the things in the storage cabinet with a smile. She carelessly lost control of her expression, and her smile was shattered. Look at what her dear old chief had sent her. Shameful names after shameful ones, but not one of them failed to explain their purpose in plain language. Zixiao is in good health. He doesn't need to take these pills. Jiang Pingji sent an offline message to the other party. Not long after there was a reply. Your father, no matter how good his health is, he's just an ordinary person. I'm just afraid that you don't have self-control and don't know how to control yourself. Do you understand? Jiang Pingji was speechless. She was really not as beastly as the old chief thought. Jiang Pingji felt wronged. Her cold and aloof persona of many years had completely collapsed in front of the old chief. Wei Ci solved his personal problems with the help of the old housekeeper. He had to make his bed, burn incense, and open the windows to disperse the smell. When Jiang Pingji came in, he had already returned to normal. My lord, you don't look happy. Did you encounter a difficult problem? Wei Ci saw that Jiang Pingji's expression was somewhat gloomy, and he became worried again. Jiang Pingji rolled up her sleeves and said with grievance, Zixiao, although I'm not a gentleman, I won't wallow in the mire with a beast. Now someone is certain that I'm a beast and won't listen to me no matter how I explain. It's so infuriating, so I've decided. Wei Ci said, decided what? Bring out the facts and reason with us? Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes and said coldly, you might as well live up to your name as a beast. Otherwise I will feel wronged. Wei Ci said, my lord, as long as you're happy. His lord's train of thought had always been different from ordinary people's. Jiang Pingji sighed faintly. Wei Ci was baffled. The news of Wei Ci waking up spread quickly. Before dinner, several people came to the residence to visit. They all said that Wei Ci was blessed and had a good life. Looking at you last night, I thought you were going to be seduced by the king of hell. Fortunately, you survived. It's time for joy to come out of the depths of misfortune. Feng Zhen sighed. You live alone in the manor and don't have any relatives to take care of you. If there's anything you want to eat, just send someone to the manor to let us know. Wei Ci was grateful for Feng Zhen's kindness. Feng Longzi usually did not behave properly, but he could be relied on during critical moments. Feng Zhen continued, it's a good thing that you're all right. Otherwise, Tiske, you didn't see what the Lord looked like. Just thinking about it makes me shudder. About the matter between Master and you, after what happened last night, people who didn't know at first probably noticed. Wei Ci asked, what's the public opinion like? It was one thing to criticize him, but Wei Ci would not do it if the Lord was implicated. There are some signs of the matter between Master and you, but they didn't see it with their own eyes. At most, they have some suspicions. Without evidence, what would they dare to say? Feng Zhen said, taking a step back, even if they have the intention to stir up trouble, they have to see if their own necks are strong enough. The matter of you being assassinated and left at the entrance of the alley has not been resolved, and the murderer has not been found. If they dare to cause trouble, will the Lord spare them? No one could figure out that Wei Ci's body was being manipulated. They thought that some force had assassinated Wei Ci to provoke Jiang Pingji. As long as the murderer was not caught, Jiang Pingji would be a barrel of gunpowder that would explode at the slightest provocation. Who would dare to commit a crime under such circumstances? Wei Ci did not say how he got the injuries on his body. He couldn't possibly say that he stabbed himself, could he? He could only keep his mouth shut and let others speculate and doubt him. Besides Feng Zhen, Feng Jin, Qiguanrang, Su Ku, and the others also visited one after another. They did not disturb the patient. After exchanging a few words, they got up and left. It was impossible for Jiang Pingji to watch over Wei Ci at all times. When his injuries were slightly better, she had to go elsewhere to busy herself. Before she left, Jiang Pingji smiled and said, when Zixiao's injuries are better, I have a gift for you. Wei Ci, who did not understand, thought it was a precious gift and immediately declined it. He only agreed after Jiang Pingji persuaded him in every possible way. In the blink of an eye, it was another autumn harvest. Jiang Pingji, the hands-off shopkeeper, had a lot of things to do. This year's harvest is much lower than last year's. What's going on? Jiang Pingji entrusted Wei Ci to someone she could trust and temporarily left Xiangyang district. She went to the other districts where the experiment was carried out to check on this year's autumn harvest. She thought that this year would be a bumper harvest with favorable weather. Unexpectedly, the grain harvested per mu was lower than last year's average. The first thing she thought of was corruption. She could not help but frown, scaring the low-ranking official who made the report. She briefly checked the accounts. They were meticulously done and there was nothing wrong with them. The fertility of the farmland is insufficient. After several years of continuous farming, the decline in the harvest is also. The other party's voice became softer as he spoke. Jiang Pingji frowned slightly. She roughly understood what the other party meant. In ancient times they relied on the most primitive manual labor. Even if the farming tools were updated later on, the productivity was still low. Apart from that, the other problem was the fertility of the farmland. Naturally, more grain was grown in fertile farmland than in barren wastelands. Back then, Jiang Pingji sent people to open up wastelands. Most of the farmland was not fertile. It was barely out of the barren category. Even if the weather was favorable for a whole year and the farmers worked hard. Apart from the harvest in the first few years, the harvest in the next few years would become less and less. She rubbed her brows and said, "Is there no way to improve the fertility of the farmland?" "There is, but the effect is insufficient. The best way is to farm for a few years and recuperate for a year. Let the farmland recover on its own," Jiang Pingji said. "That won't do. If the farmland is recuperated for a year, won't the food rations of the people and the soldiers be stretched thin?" Just as she finished speaking, the officials revealed a worried expression. "Reporting to my lord, although the harvest in the fields has declined, the decline is not significant. It will not be a problem to farm for a few more years." Chapter 14:14. Ever since he surrendered, Huang Song had been cooped up in his house. After more than half a year, the outside world had almost forgotten about him. Only then did Huang Song dare to go out once in a while. There was nothing fun to do when he went out. He went shopping, walked on the road, listened to books, and watched dramas to kill time. He was bored out of his mind. The most obvious change was that his body had gained weight and his face had become bigger. The 6 well-defined abdominal muscles on his abdomen slowly moved closer to one. The armor that used to fit him perfectly now required him to take a deep breath to put it on. Huang Song was very free, so he dragged Feng Ju, who was equally free, to listen to new books. While listening to the storyteller's novel, they drank wine and ate various snacks. From time to time they commented on the plot and talked about the situation in the outside world. Their days were very pleasant. "Hey, that person looks familiar." Huang Song was leaning against the window. Occasionally he glanced at the street below. His sharp eyes noticed that a certain figure looked very familiar. He looked at the other person. The other person seemed to sense his gaze and turned her head to look at him. Huang Song recognized the other person at a glance. He almost choked. Wasn't this person Lu Shi? Where did she crawl back from? She was an overlord of a region. She was dressed in brown and had a cloth wrapped around her head. Her trouser legs were tied up high. The straw sandals on her feet were full of mud. Her exposed calves were also dyed a dirty color. People would believe that she was a farmer in the fields, let alone a feudal lord. Jiang Pingji also saw Huang Song leaning against the window on the second floor. She changed her mind and turned to enter the tea house. Bogeo's days are quite leisurely? Jiang Pingji walked up to the second floor and was almost stopped by the waiter. Seeing that Huang Song was dressed in luxurious clothes and had put on some weight after not seeing him for a few days, the waiter suddenly felt a little jealous. Jiang Pingji walked closer. Huang Song smelled the strange smell on her body. He could not help but pinch his nose and say, "Lanting, did you fall into a cesspool?" Feng Ju also frowned. Obviously he was quite affected by the smell. Jiang Pingji said, "I didn't fall into a cesspool. Although there is a smell, it's not that bad, right?" Huang Song asked again, "Why are you dressed like this?" "I just came back from the fields. The bunch of useless people said that I was an experienced farmer, so I went deep into the mountains to meet him and asked him everything. The so-called experienced farmer was just a routine operation. It wasted my whole day." Jiang Pingji was so angry that she wanted to put her hands on her hips. Although the old farmer is experienced, many methods are recorded in farming books. It doesn't seem to be very useful. Jiang Pingji was so angry that she wanted to put her hands on her hips. Although the old farmer is experienced, many methods are recorded in farming books. Huang Song was confused. He understood every word Jiang Pingji said, but he didn't know what she was. A vassal went to see some old farmer with experience in farming? She didn't want to rule the world and became a farmer's wife? Huang Song casually asked a few questions and Jiang Pingji said, "The weather has been good this year, but the harvest is much lower than in previous years. At first, I thought that someone was embezzling, but after a careful investigation, I found out that it was due to the lack of fertility in the fields, which resulted in a drop in the yield per mu. Huang year they Huang and I Jiang in. Then. From it. In it. S in. In the eyes of others, Jiang Pingji's action could be regarded as killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. In the long run, the land would become barren fields. If we stop plowing for a year, the food shortage will be unimaginably huge. Jiang Pingji said. Plowing and resting is the last resort. Huang Song asked, what does Lanting think is the best strategy? Jiang Pingji said, of course, it's to ensure the fertility of the fields and plowing them year after year. It was a chaotic world. Food was in short supply. Wasn't it courting death to plowing and rest at this time? Although Huang Song did not know about farming, he knew that Jiang Pingji was too naive. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Chapter 14-15. Clue. Jiang Pingji curled her lips and said, of course I have a clue, but I don't have a specific plan yet. Huang Song was slightly surprised. He knew Jiang Pingji's character. She meant what she said. She would not lie about such issues. If she said that there was a clue to solve the problem of insufficient fertility in the fields, then it was most likely true. Without waiting for Huang Song to ask, Jiang Pingji found a mat and sat down. She frowned. I went to visit a few experienced farmers, and I found that their experiences could be found in the farming books. Jiang Pingji said, in other words, the precious experience they have accumulated by dealing with the fields for a lifetime is not very valuable. Apart from these old farmers, the other farmers have no idea how to farm. As a result, the harvest is different. Huang Song listened carefully. Feng Ju, who was beside him, also revealed a thoughtful expression. For a moment, he ignored the indescribable smell on Jiang Pingji. What's so strange about that? Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes at him and said angrily, there's a big problem here. If everyone uses the old farmers' methods to farm, the harvest will naturally be better. The old farmers' farming experience is accumulated for a lifetime, but their methods are not a secret in the agricultural books. What does this mean? This means that the agricultural propaganda is not in place. I should set up a government office that specializes in farming. Huang Song did not understand the meaning of the word propaganda. After all, Jiang Pingji's words were always so fashionable, but he could guess the meaning based on the context. Set up such a government office? What is it for? To teach people how to farm? Huang Song said with some disdain and confusion. In people's stereotypical impression, the government was either civil or military. Which side could farming be related to? This was the duty of farmers. How could a scholar teach farmers how to farm? Even if they came from a farming family, their goal was to study and not farm. Jiang Pingji chewed on her snacks and said, who said that only those who know how to farm are qualified to teach others how to farm? As long as this person is literate and has the ability to organize the experience in the agricultural books into books, with the experience of the old farmers, and then publicize the content to let more farmers know, won't the effect be seen? Everyone doesn't need to spend a lifetime dealing with the fields to accumulate that little bit of experience. With specific guidance, the harvest in the fields was naturally higher. Don't you think so, Bogeo? Huang Song naturally had no way to refute. What Jiang Pingji said made sense, but, you're right, but what does this have to do with the lack of fertility you mentioned? Don't tell me that setting up a government office specializing in farming can solve the problem? Logically speaking, Huang Song should not have intervened in these matters. After all, his identity was a taboo. However, he had forgotten this in a moment of carelessness. By the time Huang Song reacted, the words had already left his mouth. He could only maintain a normal expression and hold on. Jiang Pingji said, of course it has a lot to do with it. That's why I said you're not a cultured person. You don't even know how to farm. Huang Song, he had so many things to say that he didn't know where to begin. Is there a logical relationship between the two? Jiang Pingji said, are you still not convinced? Huang Song said, if you put it that way, I really can't accept it. Although he wasn't very knowledgeable, he was still a talented student under a famous scholar. His level of education was unquestionable. The farmer, in front of him, dressed in brown and walking barefoot in the mud, actually mocked him for not being a cultured person? Huang Song's rebuttal provoked a chorus of jeers from the 5 million viewers in the livestream. Poor Taoist sees your chrysanthemum is poisonous. Come, come, come. Let's guess how long the streamer will use to slap Huang Xiaosong in the face? Tudu Feiqiu, slap quickly. Ing Xiaozue, slap quickly. Yang Lu Xianyatzi, bet on slap quickly. The streamer's slap is always the freshest. She never stays overnight. With the 5 million viewers cheering for her, Jiang Pingji naturally wouldn't let them down. A fresh slap quickly came out. Jiang Pingji said, You say that you're a cultured person. Then do you know that there's a saying in the book of poetry that goes, damp wilt wilt, millet wilt wilt wilt? Huang Song thought about it and nodded. Of course I know. Doesn't this mean that rotten weeds can fertilize the fields? Jiang Pingji curled her lips and continued, Sun Zi also said, covering the earth's surface, pulling weeds to grow grain, and fertilizing the fields with manure is a matter for farmers and commoners. Doesn't this mean that human and animal manure can enrich the fertility of the land? The book of Xing also talked about related content. It talked about the wonders of manure and stable manure. From this, it can be seen that there are ways to increase fertility. It's just that ordinary people can't do it. You say that you're a cultured person. Don't you even know these things? Huang Song was speechless, but he didn't know how to refute. It was true that he was a cultured person, but which cultured person would pay special attention to these things? Huang Song was speechless after being slapped in the face by Jiang Pingji, but Feng Ju, who was beside him, was almost disgusted. Jiang Pingji saw Feng Ju's speechless expression and couldn't help but sneer. Feng Ju, do you dislike feces? If we don't use feces to increase fertility, the farmland will be squeezed dry sooner or later. Without these methods, how can the output of the farmland supply the millions of mouths in the world? Feng Ju's eyelids drooped slightly. He didn't want to argue with Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji continued, these contents can be found in books and the records aren't detailed. The specific operation still needs to be tested. I've visited several old farmers in succession over the past few days. I found out that their farmland produces more grain than others, but the plowing period is shorter. However, the farmland itself isn't fertile. This result is definitely not only due to meticulous service, but also due to other reasons. Huang Song nodded as he listened, a thoughtful look on his face. Jiang Pingji spoke until her mouth was dry. She poured herself a glass of water and drank it to quench her thirst. According to what you said, it's indeed necessary to exist. Experiment with various farming methods and fertilizers. After a certain amount of harvest, promote them to the people. Naturally, the people can take fewer detours. Jiang Pingji said, I want to build more public toilets. Huang Song let out a puzzled, ah. The topic had changed too quickly. Public toilets? What are they? A place to use the toilet and change clothes. Ordinary people farm outside. Occasionally, when they have to use the toilet, they always find a place to relieve themselves. Don't you think it's too dirty? It's more convenient for men, but it's inconvenient for women. Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows. She didn't seem to think that it was dirty. If we build public toilets for the people to use, it'll be convenient for the people, and we can also ensure the cleanliness of the streets. At the same time, we can also accumulate fertilizer. Similarly, I think we can also set up some places to raise pigs and sheep. We can run a meat business and use their stables to fertilize the land. In addition, according to my observation, the peanuts from the barbarians are also wonderful. A certain farmer planted them, and the yield per mu of the field is higher than others. Apart from peanuts, many bean plants also have the wonderful effect of fixing nitrogen. Chapter 14:16. Huang Song looked at Jiang Pingji in confusion, as if he could not understand what was in her head. He teased, if you become a landlord, you'll definitely be the most profitable landlord. This was definitely a big landlord who had been held back by his ambition to dominate the world. Even though Huang Song felt that Jiang Pingji's plan was somewhat naive and reasonable, her way of thinking was worth advocating. If everything went as smoothly as she said, how many ordinary people would benefit in the future and how many innocent people would be saved from famine and food shortage? Jiang Pingji squinted her eyes and said unhappily, you want me to be a landlord? You make it sound like I'm not a big landlord now? I don't live as well as a great landowner. They're just a bunch of good-for-nothings who don't even know how to farm. What's the use of keeping them? When the feudal vassals achieved something, which one of them didn't get drunk and sleep on the knees of beauties, and hold the power of the world when they woke up? Wasn't it all for the sake of enjoying the beauty and power at the peak of one's life? What about her? Jiang Pingji felt that her life was one of toil. She had status and power but no happiness. Jiang Pingji's anger soared. Huang Song was speechless. Farming? This was really too much. After all, most scholars did not even touch this thing. Feng Ju frowned slightly and said, Duke of Lanting's words are too biased and harsh. As the saying goes, every profession has its own specialization. The people under Duke of Lanting's banner each have their own specialties. Farming is not their forte, so it's understandable that they can't do it. You should look for a farmer. Jiang Pingji shook her head and said, Feng Sanlang is wrong. Most of the people I sent to manage the farming have relevant experience and knowledge. It wasn't that they didn't have enough knowledge, but that they stuck to conventions and didn't know how to be flexible. Even I know how to consult farming books to find information related to farming and visit experienced farmers to practice the contents of farming books. Why don't they know how to do this? To put it simply, those who managed the mulberry fields did not put their heart and soul into it. Instead, they focused on the management of the farmers and the harvest. Jiang Pingji did not lack people who could manage with their mouths open. She needed people who were truly focused on the fields. Jiang Pingji said coldly, since they don't have the ability to do so, they shouldn't have occupied the seat and not spilled the beans. Feng Ju did not continue to refute. After all, it was not suitable for him to get involved in this matter with his current status. Huang Song stepped forward to smooth things over, lest the two of them get angry. Jiang Pingji drank 2 cups of tea from them and only left after she had calmed down a little. After Jiang Pingji left, Feng Ju said, "This Duke of Lanting is interesting. He doesn't look like someone from a noble family at all." Huang Song raised his eyebrows. "Is that a compliment, Huijia?" Feng Ju said, "I don't think it's a compliment. I can only say that with a person like the Duke of Lanting, the common people will have a much better life." Huang Song said again, "I remember. Huijia seems to have a classmate from a farmer's family?" Feng Ju asked him, "There's such a classmate, but Bogeo hopes that Ju can introduce him to you?" Huang Song said, "It's not bad if we can form a good relationship with him." Feng Ju said, "Now that I think about it, I haven't contacted him for many years. I don't even know where he is now." The farmer's family had Shinnong as their ancestor. They advocated plowing mulberry and farming. Agricultural production and farmers' thoughts were the mainstream school of thought. However, the farmer's family did not develop well. It was even several times more miserable than the Mahists. At least the Mahists were able to struggle on while at death's door and developed a few loyal followers. However, there was no news about the farmer's family in recent years. It could be said that they were in dire straits. It was unknown if they could find a successor to the farmer's family. Jiang Pingji leisurely returned to the manor. On the way, she even bought a snack from the street. At that moment, the 5 million idle spectators were giving her advice. They recommended various farm manure and farming techniques to her. Jiang Pingji watched them seriously and memorized them with her heart. She ate her snacks as she wandered home. Ding dong. A private message sounded. Jiang Pingji glanced at it. It turned out to be a message from the old chief. "Yuaba, why do you have to make it so troublesome? There's an old saying that it's better to teach a man how to fish than to give him a fish." She said, "I know I can go through the back door and beg the old chief to help me purchase farm manure, but it's not a long-term solution. Using farm manure that's hundreds of years ahead of the current era will yield high benefits in the short term, but in the long term, it will kill the possibility of agricultural development in this era. Moreover, the old chief can't always purchase for me, can he? Yuaba, pulling a seedling to help it grow will indeed kill the infinite potential. You're very diligent." Jiang Pingji said, "I love what I do. After all, I'm their lord. I have to be responsible for the people under my rule." After all, what she needed was not short-term effects, but long-term development. She had stayed in this world for 10 years and put in a lot of effort. Naturally, she hoped that everything could develop better. Lu Shi was just an ordinary person. No matter how long his life was, there was a limit. She hoped that everything could develop in the best direction after she was gone. "Yuaba, you've indeed grown a lot with this awareness." When Jiang Pingji first took over the 7th Corps, she received many complaints from her old subordinates. "I used to be young and impetuous." Jiang Pingji coughed awkwardly. "Old chief, don't expose me at this time." After Jiang Pingji begged for mercy, the old chief showed mercy, and did not investigate further. "Someone call Xiaoyu over. Tell him that I have something to discuss." Jiang Pingji wanted to build a public toilet or a livestock farm, which required financial allocation. Of course, she had to find the chief butler to check the account books. Su Ku hurried over and was about to bow when Jiang Pingji stopped him. "Xiaoyu, you don't have to be so polite. It's more important to talk about business. I want to build public toilets and livestock farms everywhere to raise livestock such as cows, sheep, and pigs. Send someone to come up with a plan and see how much capital it will cost." Jiang Pingji went straight to the point, but Su Ku was dumbfounded. Why did he have to build a livestock farm and a public toilet out of nowhere? Jiang Pingji explained her purpose in detail. Su Ku's blank expression gradually turned serious. My lord, it's hard to say how much it will cost. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. What? Su Ku said, what's the size and shape of the public toilets? What's the scale of the livestock farm? How many livestock will be raised and how much manpower will be needed? No matter how capable he was, he needed to know this to determine how much it would cost. Jiang Pingji scratched her head. I haven't decided yet. I'll think about it tonight. I'll tell you tomorrow. She was used to being a hands-off boss. She only talked and did not do anything, but now it didn't work. Su Ku said, there's still a long way to go. There's no hurry. Jiang Pingji rested her chin on her hand and said, there's no hurry. If we don't solve this matter as soon as possible, it'll make me feel uncomfortable. If she could not settle everything before the spring plowing next year, the next year's harvest would be affected. How could she not worry? Chapter 14-17. Just as Feng Ju put down the pen in his hand, familiar footsteps came from the corridor outside the house. Father? Feng Ju packed up the letter unhurriedly. Seeing that it was Feng Ren, his knitted brows relaxed. Feng Ren saw his movements and raised his eyebrows. Did you ask the servant to look for me just now? What's the matter? Feng Ju said, Father, you have a lot of connections. I would like to ask you for a favor and pass this letter to a classmate of mine when I was studying. He was in an awkward situation now. He needed to be careful in his communication. Feng Ju thought about it several times. He felt that it was most appropriate for his father to do this. His second brother, Feng Jin, could also do it, but the two brothers rarely met. After Feng Jin got married, he separated from the family due to various reasons. He did not live with them anymore, so Feng Ju could only ask his father for help. Feng Ren did not take the letter. He just looked down at the name and signature on the letter. Feng Ju took the initiative to explain, I met the Duke of Lanting today. I thought she might need this person, so I made a recommendation. Feng Ren's brows relaxed. He reached out to take the letter and asked, why don't you do it yourself? If the recommendation was meritorious, Feng Ju could use this opportunity to become an official again. As a father, Feng Ren naturally did not want his youngest son to deal with a 3 or 2-year-old kid all day long. Feng Ju was not born to be a teacher. Asking him to teach and educate people? Haha, misleading the young. Huang Song was also open-minded. He entrusted his daughter to Feng Ju. Wasn't he afraid that she would be taught to deviate? Feng Ju said, I have no interest in an official career. I helped to recommend him today because I think the Duke of Lanting's temperament is interesting. Feng Ren sighed secretly. He had already experienced his youngest son's stubbornness. He had no choice but to let it go. Then, who is this person you recommended? Feng Ren asked casually. Whether Feng Ju had the intention to become an official or not, he took the initiative to use his connections to help Jiang Pingji attract talents. This was a signal of goodwill. Feng Ren naturally did not want Feng Ju's goodwill. Because of the details, they would not be able to form an alliance but instead become enemies. Feng Ju saw through his father's thoughts and said coldly, I'm afraid he is the only remaining descendant of the family. This person's surname is Do, and his name is Shi. His courtesy name is Zong Guang. He was my classmate when I was studying. According to what the Duke of Lanting said today, she might be able to use this person. Feng Ren asked in surprise, Nongfu? Although the House of Agriculture was one of the 100 families, it had been in dire straits for hundreds of years. When Feng Ren was an official in the imperial court, he had never heard of any official who was from the House of Agriculture. Although the Mo family was in a miserable state, at least they still had a few descendants. Now that they had received Jiang Pingji's support, they had the potential to prosper. What about the farmers? Most of the members of the School of Agriculture were officials in agriculture. In layman's terms, they were officials related to agriculture. But because the School of Agriculture was in decline, those officials had nothing to do with the School of Agriculture. Feng Ren was quite shocked to hear that his son was the successor of a certain School of Agriculture. Feng Ren asked Feng Ju, although the Duke of Lanting attaches great importance to agriculture, I've never heard her mention this. In the past, Jiang Pingji needed the disciples of the Mahist family. Even if the Mahist family and the Confucians were at odds, she would specifically look for the disciples of the Mahist family. Now that they needed the people of the agricultural family, why wasn't there any news about it? Feng Ju briefly explained what he had bumped into that day. In his opinion, Jiang Pingji was indeed an interesting person. I see. This is like her style. Feng Ren showed a cautious and approving expression. Then what can he do? If he was a talent, it would naturally be a good thing. If he was a mediocre talent, not only would he bring harm to the people, but others would also criticize Feng Ju, who had introduced him, for getting into trouble for no reason. Feng Ren's heart ached for his youngest son, so he naturally had to help him control the situation. Feng Ju said, "It's hard to say about his talent, but his temperament and work style are what the Duke of Lanting needs the most." What did Jiang Pingji need the most? She needed a talent who was down-to-earth, hard-working, obsessed with agriculture, and willing to compile agricultural books to benefit the people. Even if this person was not from the School of Agriculture, as long as he met these conditions, he would most likely be appointed by Jiang Pingji. He did not need a lot of professional knowledge, but he must have professional self-restraint. After thinking about it, the candidate recommended by Feng Ju just happened to meet her standards. That's good. Feng Ren nodded and said, "As long as this person hasn't moved to another place, I will find a way to send the letter to that person. To avoid wasting time, it's best to inform the Duke of Lanting about this. As long as this person is under the rule of the Duke of Lanting, he will definitely be found." Although Feng Ju and that person were classmates, they did not have much contact. He only vaguely remembered where the person was from, but he did not even know his home address. Feng Ju said, "I heard that this person's ancestors served as an agricultural official for several terms during the Xia dynasty. If we follow this clue, we should be able to find him." At the same time, Jiang Pingji also thought of the School of Agriculture after being reminded by the audience in the streaming room. Since she pinned her hopes on the development of science and technology on the Mo family, the School of Agriculture would naturally be indispensable in the development of agriculture. Jiang Pingji searched for information on the School of Agriculture overnight. After reading it, she had a hunch that it would be difficult to find people from the School of Agriculture. The School of Agriculture was roughly divided into two categories. The first category advocated sowing hundreds of grains and advised people to plow mulberries so that they could have enough food and clothing. The second category was related to their political ideology. For example, the ruler and his ministers plowed and ate together. In layman's terms, the ruler should plow and cook together with the people. From a modern point of view, this was promoting equal labor for everyone. There seemed to be nothing wrong with it, but would the feudal rulers in ancient times care about this? Seeing this, Jiang Pingji knew why the School of Agriculture was worse off than the Mo family. This political ideology was like stepping on a landmine. In this aspect, the Confucian school was more favored by the rulers. It was no wonder that it was later revered as the head of the 100 schools of thought. Speaking of which, can I find a decent successor for the School of Agriculture? Jiang Pingji was not confident about this. Kujiao Qifan, what are you afraid of? Streamer, you have to believe that you are the chosen one. The talents you need will automatically come to you. Wuxing Dianji, you might even be able to cultivate an ancient version of the father of Paddy. Kenbi Zhongji, even salted fish have dreams. As the chief instructor of 5 million salted fish, the streamer must be the most salted one. Some salted fish are not serious, but some salted fish are very serious. Kumiko Lemon, actually, I've always had a doubt. Didn't the School of Mo and the Confucian school not get along? Why can Zhang Ping, Xiao Guang, and the others receive high salaries and treatment in the Confucian school? I've watched the streaming for many years, but I've never seen them fight because of the difference in ideology. Chapter 14-18. Canteen Dafinanti, I don't agree. Speaking of scheming, isn't the streamer the ancestor? Can low-level scheming be * cheese attract her interest? He deeply suspected that this was the main reason why Jiang Pingji liked practical people. Not long after, the bullet screen received tens of thousands of likes, and it suddenly became a hot topic. Jiang Pingji was speechless. These salted fishes were too much. Did she look like a person with a belly full of evil ideas? Jiang Pingji coughed softly. She could not see the awkwardness of being exposed. She highly affirmed the speculations of the serious salted fishes and chose to ignore the unserious bullet screen. Old driver is right. That's the general situation. Jiang Pingji supported her cheeks and said, I only need practical people. Those scheming fellows don't seem to have any other use other than wasting the salary I give them. They occupy the latrine but don't shit. What do I need them for? If there are too many troublemakers who stir up internal strife, it will easily corrupt the atmosphere. It will be difficult to lead the people's hearts. It was not that people who were good at scheming were useless, but for Jiang Pingji at the current stage their value was too little. No matter how one looked at it, she admired practical people more. Because industry thrives the country. Jiang Pingji rarely called out names. Naturally, she did not know that the old salted fish was so happy that he jumped 3 feet high. The corners of his mouth were about to reach his ears. Lao Siji Lianming, sob sob sob, the streamer's voice is so nice. I feel like I'm blessed by the moon god and Cupid at the same time. Mama, did you hear that? The sweetheart I've been chasing for 10 years finally took pity on me. She called me old driver. The salted fish screamed crazily in his heart. Mujio Yijiujia Wanli, you're one of the ancient big shots in the streaming room. Be more reserved. The salted fish who was not called out smiled on the surface, but his heart was burning with jealousy. The bullet screen was full of emojis of secretly gritting teeth in jealousy. 5 million salted fishes. Why did they get special treatment? This luck was even more enviable than winning the lottery with 5 million yuan. No matter how lucky the salted fishes were, they were still not as lucky as Jiang Pingji. She was worried about finding a suitable candidate. The next day, Feng Ren paid her a visit and tactfully mentioned that Feng Ju was recommending talents for her. Jiang Pingji's hands trembled and she raised her eyebrows in surprise. Even the way she addressed Feng Ju became more intimate. Huaijie schoolmate? Jiang Pingji was a person who held a grudge. Feng Ju was indifferent to her, so she addressed Feng Ju as Feng Sanlang. Since Feng Ju had expressed his goodwill to her, she might as well change her attitude. Feng Ren didn't notice it. He said with a smile, my son admires that person very much. He should be good. Jiang Pingji asked, where is he? If that person lived very far away, it would take 2 to 3 months for Jiang Pingji to conquer him. It would take too much time. When Feng Ren came to see Jiang Pingji, he naturally knew her address. Coincidentally, the man was from Shangyang County's Yang Mountain. His ancestor had been an agricultural official several times, so following this trail was easy to find. So you're saying that he's from the same hometown as you? If he is truly talented, I would like to recruit him to work for me. Jiang Pingji finished speaking with a smile, but soon after, she revealed a somewhat awkward expression. She said, there's something that you don't know. The promotion of talents this time was related to the livelihood of the people, so the candidates had to be very careful. I'd like to go and take a look myself, but I'm busy with worldly affairs and can't get away. Go there personally? Feng Ren was shocked and secretly speechless. It was just a farmer's talent. She could just send an official document to recruit him. Why did she need a feudal lord to go there personally? For this talent to go there personally, it showed that her next move was extremely important. At least it could cause a great change in the power structure. In the blink of an eye, several thoughts flashed through Feng Ren's mind. Jiang Pingji acted as if she didn't see it. She continued, speaking of which, the construction of the branch of the Jinlin Academy in Shangyang County is about to start. Feng Ren instantly understood. He smiled bitterly and said, Master Lanting is busy with affairs. I'm afraid you can't do it yourself. If you don't mind my old age and incompetence, why don't you entrust this matter to me? Coincidentally, I'm also going to Shangyang County to supervise the construction of the branch. I can handle both matters on the way. Other than Qing Qing, Feng Ren, Yuan Jing, and Wan Xian, these great scholars were precisely not Jiang Pingji's aides and retainers. She couldn't order them around at will. For example, regarding the branch of the Jinlin Academy, she had discussed with these educational experts. She didn't make arbitrary decisions. This time she wanted to entrust Feng Ren to make a trip on her behalf. Jiang Pingji also had to subtly hint crazily. Feng Ren accepted it tactfully. If he didn't, he could pretend to be deaf and mute. Fortunately, Feng Ren didn't refuse. Instead, he agreed with a smile. Thank you for your understanding. I'll write a letter now. Feng Ren finally couldn't hold back his curiosity. He asked, he's just a farmer. If he's a genius, he's not worthy of being treated so seriously by Master Lanting. I have many questions in my mind. Therefore, I dare to ask, why does Master Lanting value him so much? Jiang Pingji said, this person may be able to benefit millions of people and eliminate famine. Not to mention writing a letter, it's not too much to go there personally. Feng Ren's heart was pounding. He was a little stunned. Could the person recommended by his unreliable youngest son really carry Jiang Pingji's high hopes? Talents couldn't be recommended blindly. If the recommended person didn't have any real ability, it would ruin the reputation of the guarantor. He deliberated and said, if that's the case, I'll make a trip on behalf of Master Lanting. If that person is really talented, I'll definitely bring him back. Feng Ren was also a sly old fox. He didn't say too much. Instead, he left a way out. If the person was talented, he'd bring him back. If not, he'd stop. Anyway, he couldn't blame it on him. Jiang Pingji saw through him but didn't say anything. She smiled but didn't say anything. Not only did she give Feng Ren the letter for the expedition, but she also gave him the draft of the agricultural book that she'd sorted out a while ago. If that person was well-versed, he'd definitely see the value of those drafts. If he wasn't well-versed, Jiang Pingji wouldn't have wasted her effort. From the beginning to the end, the salted fish in the streaming room was the most surprised. Kazejio Chifan, I'm giving the streamer 666 brainlessly. She's indeed the chosen one. She gets whatever she wants. Yesterday she was still worried about the farmer. Today Feng Ren came to deliver a pillow. What could be more awesome than this? Liren Choshuang, Feng Ren, you've gained countless fans with this move. Looking at the screen full of 666 comments, Jiang Pingji couldn't help but laugh. She secretly analyzed the hidden intention of Feng Ren's move. She lowered her head and was lost in thought. Unexpectedly, the direction of the bullet screen in the streaming room changed instantly. When she came back to her senses, countless exclamation marks almost drowned her in the bullet screen. What's happening? Tudu Feichio, streamer, look at the streaming room. The streaming room? What's wrong with the streaming room? Jiang Pingji was surprised. She carefully looked for the difference in the streaming room and found that there was an additional announcement. To thank the audience for their support over the years, the streaming room has unlocked the segment, Dream of 1,000 Years. Viewers, old and new, are welcome to participate. What the hell? Chapter 1419. Kuai Xiaoming Xn, a class representative can explain. What is this dream of 1,000 years? Blue drawer. It sounds like something I don't understand, but it sounds awesome. Carefree hee. No. It's more like a magical welfare reward. I'm super curious. The salted fish on the red bullet screen was surprised and curious like a baby. The salted fish on the blue bullet screen was one-sided. Ikwai duo zhangda. Oh my god, have you fallen? Dream of 1,000 Years is out. Yang family's little princess. Is Dream of 1,000 Years going to be reopened? TSK. Are those idiots going to pounce on us again? Sijuan Bourgeois, let's go. I thought this streamer was a decent streamer. I didn't expect her to hide so much. Scary. The salted fish on the blue bullet screen obviously knew what was going on. The bullet screen was filled with shock, fear, disappointment, scolding, and some even said that Jiang Pingji was a scheming B*TC. After pretending to be a vassal for so many years, she finally couldn't help but reveal her fox's tail. It was disgusting. Seeing that the content on the blue bullet screen was getting more and more outrageous, many of the salted fish on the red bullet screen could no longer sit still. They all stood up and cheered for Jiang Pingji. They hadn't even figured out what the Dream of 1,000 Years program was. Why did these guys start to hate the person they liked? Kneel and call daddy. Hey. I can't hold my temper anymore. What do you mean? Scolding people has to follow the basic rules. Did our streamer offend you? If you don't want to watch the stream, get out. Don't occupy the latrine and take up our spot. Do you really think salted fish like us are useless? The salted fish on the red bullet screen had always claimed to be Jiang Pingji's loyal fans. After all, they were Jiang Pingji's solid support since the beginning. The salted fish on the blue bullet screen were just a group of guys who joined later. If they weren't separated by a dimension, they would have started fighting. Didlama, bah. Don't blindly protect this streamer. I've finally seen through her. No matter what persona she has, she's still a beggar on the internet. The previous streamer was also a talented woman. She was a gentle, elegant, and dignified classical beauty. She applauded for the sake of watching the stream with men. Wasn't the so-called Dream of 1,000 Years a platform for chicken recruitment? The previous host only went online after he was done with his F***king persona and pretentious enough. Now that the host is the strongest duke in the world, the price of going online will definitely be much more expensive than before. This viewer's bullet screen received a lot of likes from the blue bullet screen salted fish. Because of the previous time traveler, Dream of 1,000 Years was more famous than Tavern Heaven on Earth in their world. As long as one had money, one could place a task in the Dream of 1,000 Years section of the live broadcast room. After the host accepted the task, the audience could experience sensory enjoyment in their dreams that was infinitely close to reality. A rich man could order and choose to have sex with any woman he wanted. Previously, there were many tycoons who placed orders to have sex with the former host in the dream. After they were tired of it, they ordered other women. This was simply a large-scale brothel. Speaking up to this point, some people had doubts. The previous host had gone too far. Could it be that no victim had found any clues? How did he find out? The previous host, who was also the queen of time travel, Huiyun, had the help of the system. She could casually throw out a loyalty talisman and control an ordinary person, making them dead set on her. If the transmigrator couldn't bear to waste the loyalty talisman, she had other evil ways to control people, ensuring that the victim wouldn't find out anything after the matter was over. Even if it was a young girl who had never done anything, she had a way to deceive everyone after the deed was done. She ensured that the girl's future husband wouldn't be able to tell that his wife had already lost her virginity to countless men. Using this method, the transmigrator successfully worked as a brothel keeper for more than a decade. The Dongqing Palace and Zhongzhou Palace were considered the hardest-hit areas. The palace maids and concubines suffered greatly, and it was unknown how many innocent women were harmed. To this day, many otakus still had hundreds of gigabytes of videos stored on their computers, enlightening countless youths with X knowledge. The blue bullet screen salted fish naturally didn't know these inside stories. However, when the transmigrator was a host, the live broadcast room was indeed foul. 9 out of 10 times, there would be inharmonious content. Many otakus couldn't climb over the wall to watch Japanese porn, so they simply collected the recordings of the live broadcast room. The content of the recordings was more hardcore and explosive than many other movies. Most importantly, they didn't charge money. A few years later, these recordings had a huge impact on the production chain of a certain business in Japan, causing a period of depression and loss. All kinds of dark history could be said to be innumerable. The blue bullet screen salted fish saw the words, "Dream of 1,000 years," and subconsciously thought of the fear of the live broadcast room being dominated by the 8th letter. Under Jiang Pingji's management, the live broadcast room had already escaped from the shadow of the previous host. People had also forgotten about the dark history, but it didn't mean that they had forgotten it. All they needed was an opportunity and all the memories would come back. With the help of the blue bullet screen, the red salted fish finally knew what Dream of 1,000 years meant. However, Tudu Feichio, the host would never do such a thing. Otherwise I would live broadcast eating rice fields. Sankei, I agree with the ancient big boss. Guikai Guofengxiu, I'd rather believe in this sexy host who kills people online, than believe that she would do such a thing. I realize that you guys really don't have a clue. Before you suspect the host, ask yourselves, in terms of status, wealth, and power, can you compare to the host? In terms of talent, temperament, and looks, can you compare to Beauty CI? Lao Ciji Lianming, you don't even have the right to touch the corner of her clothes. Do you really think that you can do whatever you want just because you have some money for breakfast? The 5 million salted fish on the red and blue bullet screen, that's heart-wrenching, buddy. The salted fish clutched their chests and vomited blood. The ancient big boss was indeed an ancient big boss. His words were sharp and ruthless. With a few words he could cause an infinite psychological trauma to people. They didn't have Wei Si's talent, temperament, and looks. What made them think that the host would like them? They didn't have the status, wealth, and power of the host. What made them think that the host would care about their money for breakfast? In summary, they really didn't even have the right to touch the corner of the host's clothes. Ing ngong carrot ngong, be a baboon. Although it's the truth, cough cough, the big boss should be merciful. After all, salted fish have a fragile glass heart. The live broadcast room was treacherous and unpredictable. Jiang Pingji lowered her head and carefully read the introduction of Dream of 1,000 Years. System, Dream of 1,000 Years. Past life and present life. Guess who you were in your past life. In order to thank the audience for their support over the years, and to give the audience the opportunity to have close contact with their favorite host, every week, one lucky audience member will be selected to go through 12 hours of dream travel. Jiang Pingji, this Dream of 1,000 Years, was completely different from the Dream of 1,000 Years that the salted fish were talking about. But, you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.